The cell is silent, but not empty. Shadows breathe against the walls, thick with sweat and despair. Iron doors seal the air, and every sound, the scrape of a chain, the cough of a broken man, echoes like a confession in a cathedral of punishment. Here, beneath the endless hives of the Imperium, prisoners rot in darkness so absolute that time itself seems to collapse. Days dissolve into nights without meaning, weeks blur into lifetimes. The men and women trapped here were once citizens of the Emperor's vast dominion. Farmers, merchants, deserters, smugglers, all reduced to nothing more than numbered bodies pressed into the bowels of a penal world. Their names have been burned from the records, their pasts erased. To the administratum, they are no longer men and women. They are simply resources, disposable flesh waiting for purpose. The guards walk the corridors in silence, their boots ringing against steel grates. Their faces are hidden by rebreathers, their voices swallowed by vox filters. They do not speak to the prisoners, for speech is wasted breath. Instead, the prisoners are herded like cattle, prodded with shock staves when they stumble, dragged into lightless chambers where they are measured, branded, broken. The first mark is seared into the skin with a branding iron, a sigil of shame carved into flesh, declaring them penal legionnaires before they have even held a weapon. The smell of burning skin fills the air, rising above the stench of damp stone. The branded scream, but the walls do not care. Their voices die in the same darkness that devoured their freedom. And then come the chains, heavy links of blackened steel clasped around wrists and ankles, forcing the body to bend, to shuffle instead of stride. The chains serve no real purpose. The cells are already secure, the guards already armed. No, the chains are symbols. They remind every prisoner of their place, that they are not free, that their strength belongs to the Imperium now. Some resist at first, they spit, curse, thrash against the bonds. But resistance is met with brutality. Shock lashes crack across bare backs, splitting skin open. Teeth are broken with rifle butts. The stubborn are left to starve in the dark until their defiance collapses into silence. And when silence comes, the chains remain. There are no trials here, no appeals to law or justice. Once condemned, the prisoner belongs to the Legion. Innocence is irrelevant. Guilt is irrelevant. What matters is utility. The Imperium demands bodies, and the Penal Legions provide them. Whispers pass between the chained in the moments when the guards are gone. Stories of what awaits them. Some speak of battles where thousands of penal soldiers are thrown forward in the first wave, their collars detonating if they dare to flee. Others tell of planets consumed by tyrannids, where penal troops are marched straight into the swarm, their lives spent in hours. None of the stories end in freedom, none end in redemption. And yet when the gates open, they shuffle forward, chains rattling, heads bowed, eyes hollow. The condemned march not because they believe in the Emperor, not because they seek forgiveness, but because there is no other path left. The transports wait above, vast black ships, their hulls scarred with the ghosts of 1,000 forgotten campaigns. Their engines rumble like distant thunder, promising only exile and death. The prisoners are herded aboard in silence, their chains clattering against the loading ramps. No farewells are spoken, for no one waits to see them go. In this way the Penal Legion is born, not with oaths of loyalty, not with banners or hymns, but with fire seared into flesh, with chains biting into bone, and with the silence of men and women who know that their lives no longer belong to themselves. And as the void ship doors seal shut, the darkness claims them once more, carrying them toward battlefields where their screams will vanish into the roar of war. Inside its cold iron belly, there are no windows, no stars, no sense of direction, only the endless hum of engines and the echo of chains grinding against steel floors. For the Penal Legionnaires, time once again dissolves. Hours bleed into days, days into something longer. The silence is broken only by the shuffle of boots and the sharp crack of a guard's shock baton. The air is stale, heavy with oil and rust, fouled by the sweat of hundreds of prisoners confined to a single hold. Lights flicker overhead, buzzing faintly, throwing shadows across scarred faces. Some stare blankly at the floor, their minds already lost. Others whisper, muttering prayers or curses beneath their breath. A few still burn with fury, eyes sharp, jaws clenched. But their rage has nowhere to go. The chains hold them. The collars remind them. Around each neck sits the Emperor's leash, the obedience collar, a slim band of black steel, studded with tiny lights, humming faintly with unseen energy. To the untrained eye it is just metal, but every prisoner knows the truth. Inside lies a charge of explosive power, enough to tear their heads from their shoulders in an instant. The guards do not need to shout, they do not need to threaten. The collar itself speaks, louder than words. It promises death at the press of a button. It whispers, "You belong to us. Your life ends when we choose." And so the prisoners march in silence, the clinking of their chains drowned out by the phantom ticking of the bombs around their throats. Some still dream of escape. They speak of overpowering guards, stealing weapons, seizing the ship. But those who try are reminders for the rest. A sudden flash of light, a sharp crack like thunder, and then silence as a body crumples, headless, blood steaming on the metal floor. The stench of burned flesh lingers long after, seeping into the lungs of those who watch. No one speaks of escape again. Meals are little more than nutrient paste shoveled into trays, eaten in silence while guards stand watch with rifles raised. There is no conversation, no camaraderie, even among the condemned. Trust is rare. Each man and woman knows the others were criminals, thieves, deserters, rebels, heretics. For many, survival means silence, because the wrong word whispered in the wrong ear can end with a bolt pistol at the base of the skull. And yet in the corners of the hold, whispers bloom like weeds in the dark. Some say that service in the Penal Legions is a chance at redemption, that enough blood shed on the battlefield might cleanse their sins, that survival, though unlikely, might bring freedom. Others laugh bitterly at such lies, insisting that no one ever returns, that once the chains are locked, the collar clasped, the legionnaire is already dead, a ghost simply waiting for the moment his body catches up. Both stories spread, because hope and despair are the only currencies left, and in the endless void between stars, even lies can keep a man alive for a little longer. When the ship finally descends onto a world of war, the prisoners are herded from their holds like cattle, the doors groan open, spilling stale air into the dust and ash of an alien battlefield. The light is blinding after the void, stabbing into their eyes like knives. Chains rattle, boots stumble, and one by one they march into a world painted in fire. Above them, banners of the Imperial Guard flutter in the smoke. Vast regiments of soldiers stand in formation, armored, armed, their uniforms crisp and marked with regimental pride. For a brief moment, the chained ones look on and remember what it was to be human, to belong to something greater, but the memory fades as quickly as it came. For they do not stand among the guard, they stand apart, herded into their own ranks, collars glinting in the sun like brands of shame. They are not comrades to the soldiers of the Imperium, they are shields, fodder, the first line to fall so that others may live. A commissar rides past on a black steed, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of his cap, his hand resting lightly on the grip of his bolt pistol. He does not look at them as men, he looks at them as numbers, already accounted for in a ledger of death. His voice cuts across the field like a blade. You are already dead. Your lives belong to the Emperor. You will spend them where he demands, and you will not falter, for if you falter, your death will be slower and far more painful. No one answers. The collars answer for them, and so begins their service, not with oaths, not with hymns, but with silence, chains, and the knowledge that they march not toward life, but into the jaws of inevitable death. The Penal Legionnaires are driven into makeshift barracks, long corrugated halls of steel, their walls streaked with rust, their floors blackened by years of blood and filth. There are no beds, no blankets, only straw scattered thinly across the metal floor. The chains still bind their wrists and ankles, rattling whenever they move. Even in sleep they cannot forget what they are. The guards strip them bare, shave their heads, and spray them down with hoses of recycled water, colder than ice. There is no dignity in it, no attempt to cleanse, only to strip away what remains of their humanity. Tattoos, scars and the marks of their old lives fade beneath the grime of uniform rags thrust into their arms. The garments are not tailored, not fitted, just grey cloth, coarse and rough, designed only to mark them apart from the true soldiers of the guard. And then the collars hum, a sharp pulse surges through every neck, a reminder of their lead. The prisoners gasp, stumble, clutching at their throats. But the pain vanishes as quickly as it came. It is not meant to kill, not yet. It is meant to remind. On the parade ground, they are drilled beneath the whips of overseers. The training is not about skill. There is no time for that, no patience for it. The Penal Legionnaires are not trained to be marksmen or tacticians. They are trained to run forward when told, to fire when told, to die when told. A las gun is thrust into each pair of hands. Some are cracked, others rust. A few hum faintly unstable, their charge packs leaking with dangerous heat. Ammunition is rationed in single digits. The message is clear. Weapons are not gifts. They are burdens. You are expected to die with them, not survive by them. The commissar watches from the steps of the command post, his bolt pistol gleaming in the sun. His eyes scan the lines of chained soldiers, his expression unmoved. When one man falters, dropping his las gun, stumbling under the weight of exhaustion, the commissar does not speak. He simply raises his pistol, pulls the trigger, and paints the ground with the man's blood. The silence that follows is absolute. No words are needed. The lesson is etched into every face. Obedience is survival. Hesitation is death. At night, the barracks echo with whispers. Some whisper prayers to the emperor, though their words are hollow, twisted by fear. Others curse his name under their breath, though they know such blasphemy could damn them even further. A few whisper of freedom, of tearing the collars from their necks and fleeing into the ash wastes beyond the camp. But none dare act. Every thought of escape is smothered by the memory of sudden detonations, of headless corpses left as warnings in the dust. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by the cries of nightmares and the sudden crack of a guard's whip against a restless prisoner. And when dawn breaks, there is no dawn, only another day, identical to the last. Drills, whips, hunger, the weight of collars humming faintly against the skin. Yet beneath the despair something darker festers, a kind of numbness. The first days are filled with rage, grief, denial, but as weeks pass, the emotions rot, faces grow blank, eyes hollow. They do not speak of home because home no longer exists. They do not speak of family because family no longer remembers them. What remains is silence, the silence of men and women who know they are already ghosts, walking only until their bodies catch up with their deaths. And then comes the first deployment. Sirens howl across the camp, harsh and shrill, cutting through the air like blades. The Penal Legionnaires are herded into lines, their chains unfastened only so they can march faster. Trucks wait at the edge of the camp, engines growling, their beds lined with cages of steel. The prisoners are forced aboard, packed shoulder to shoulder until they can scarcely breathe. Above the rumble of engines, a voice echoes through the Vox speakers, cold, detached. You are the Emperor's currency. You will be spent where needed. Glory is not for you. Survival is not for you. You are here to serve, and you will serve until death claims you. The trucks grind forward carrying their human cargo toward the front lines. Dust clouds rise in their wake, swallowing the camp, until it disappears behind them. The Legionnaires do not speak. They sit in silence, chains clinking faintly, eyes fixed on nothing. They know what waits ahead, the battlefield, and in their hollow hearts, one truth beats louder than the rumble of engines, that whatever happens next, it will not be for them, it will be for the Imperium, for an empire that has already forgotten their names. The ride to the front lasts hours. The trucks grind across broken terrain, their wheels kicking up dust and smoke through narrow slits in the steel cages. The Legionnaires catch glimpses of a scarred world, skies blackened by ash, rivers running red with rust, ruins of cities long since abandoned. The horizon is jagged with war, where fire blooms and thunder never stop. The Penal Legionnaires sit shoulder to shoulder, their collars humming faintly, their hands bound to their weapons. No words pass between them. Some close their eyes, as if already surrendering to the void. Others stare blankly at the floor, lips moving in silent prayers to gods who will never answer. At last, the trucks grind to a halt, the doors screech open, spilling the condemned into the choking air of the war zone. The ground beneath their boots is blackened earth, pitted with shell craters and littered with the bones of the forgotten. The smell is thick, oil, blood, burning flesh carried on the wind. Overhead, artillery roars like an endless storm, each impact shaking the ground beneath their chains. The Penal Legionnaires are driven into formation. Officers bark orders, their voices amplified by vox speakers. Commissars ride the lines, their bolt pistols gleaming, their eyes sharp with disdain. To the side, the Imperial Guards stand in proud regiments, uniforms clean, banners raised, weapons gleaming with care. They look upon the chained ranks not as comrades, but as shields, as bait, as the first wave meant to die. And the Penal Legionnaires know it. They do not protest, they do not beg, they only stand in silence, their collars glinting like executioners' blades beneath the grey sky. The first briefing comes in cold words, no tactics, no strategy, no pretense of survival. The mission is simple: march into the teeth of the enemy and draw their fire, nothing more. No mention of victory, no promise of redemption, only death, spent for the sake of others. One by one, each legionnaire is given a single charge pack for their last gun. No spares, no grenades, no armor. Their collars hum again, sharp pulses, searing against their skin, reminding them of the price of hesitation. A sergeant, scarred and silent, walks the line, and locks eyes with the condemned. He does not smile, he does not sneer, he only mutters, "You're already dead, remember that. And maybe you'll last longer than a minute." The prisoners exchange no words, they only tighten their grips on their weapons, though their hands shake. And then the siren wails, the order is given, the front gates groan open, and the Penal Legionnaires are driven forward. Their chains clatter with every step, their boots sinking into mud thick with blood. Ahead, the horizon burns with enemy fire, last bolts flashing, artillery screaming, alien roars echoing across the battlefield. The first wave stumbles into no man's land. The air is alive with death, tracer fire, cutting down men and women before they have taken more than a dozen steps. Collars flash as explosions bloom among the hesitant, skulls bursting, bodies crumpling into the mud. There is no retreat, only forward. The legionnaires run, their breaths ragged, their weapons clutched tight. Some fire wildly, their shots vanishing into the smoke. Others scream wordless cries, charging as though their voices might shield them from the storm. The ground erupts around them, shells tearing flesh from bone, last fire slicing through bodies. Men and women fall, but the tide does not stop. For every legionnaire that dies, another is driven forward by the fear of the collar, by the crack of a commissar's pistol, by the knowledge that death behind is worse than death ahead. They are not soldiers, they are sacrifices. And yet, in their charge, there is something almost defiant, a raw, brutal will to exist for even one more heartbeat. The battlefield drinks deeply of their blood, their screams rise above the thunder, only to be swallowed by it moments later. They fall in droves, nameless, faceless, forgotten, before their bodies even hit the mud. And yet, the charge continues, because the Penal Legion does not stop. It cannot stop. And in the grim silence of the commissar's gaze, their fate is sealed. They march not as men and women, but as ghosts, already written into the margins of history, destined to vanish into the smoke of war. This is how a Penal Legion is forged, not in loyalty, not in glory, but in chains, in collars, and in blood, spilled freely on a battlefield that will never remember their names. The collar is not heavy, that is its cruelty. It rests against the skin, like any other band of steel, humming faintly, its lights flickering with hidden menace. At first, many Penal Legionnaires mistake it for nothing more than a restraint, a chain like the ones that bind their wrists. But soon, they learn the truth. Inside the slim ring of blackened metal lies a shard of death, a shaped charge, crafted with precision by the Mechanicus,
designed to blossom outward with surgical brutality. It is not meant to maim, it is not meant to warn, it is meant to obliterate the head of the wearer in a single devastating flash. One moment, a man is alive, breathing, sweating, clutching his weapon. The next, there is only smoke, a burst of red and silence where his voice used to be. The first time it happens, the entire line of chained men stops. A prisoner stumbles, falls to his knees, refusing to rise. His eyes blaze with defiance as he spits curses at the guards. For a heartbeat, it seems as if he will resist, as if he will prove that even the condemned can deny their masters. But then the collar beeps, a sound so small it seems almost mocking. A sharp flash follows. The man's head is gone, his body twitches, then collapses into the dust. The others stare. They do not scream, they do not speak, they simply look upon the smoking corpse and understand. The guards do not explain, they do not need to. The collar has spoken in the only language that matters: obedience through fear, discipline through death. From that moment on, every penal legionnaire learns to walk carefully. Each turn of the head, each tilt of the neck, becomes a reminder of the blade resting invisibly against their flesh. The collar is not a weight, it is a shadow, a constant whisper of mortality. It ticks silently in the back of the mind, an invisible clock counting down to the inevitable. Some say the collars can be removed, that with the right tools, the right knowledge, they can be disarmed. Such whispers pass between prisoners at night, blooming like desperate weeds in the darkness of the barracks. But those who try soon discover the truth. A faint beep, a flash, and then silence. No one speaks of it afterward. The corpses are left where they fall, blood soaking into the dirt, a warning written in red. Others whisper that the collars are rigged to detonate at the whim of the commissar, that no matter how bravely they fight, no matter how loyal their charge into the guns of the enemy, their lives can be ended by a single press of a button. A punishment for hesitation, a reminder that death is never their own choice to make. And in that fear lies the true genius of the device. It does not need to kill every man who falters, it needs only to kill one. The rest will march. The penal legionnaires learn to sleep with their collars pressed against the floor, listening to the faint hum, reminding themselves that as long as the lights glow steady, they march with their hands trembling, not from the weight of their weapons, but from the knowledge that at any moment, with no warning, their existence can vanish in smoke. On the battlefield, the collar shapes every step. When the order is given to advance, there is no hesitation. When the command comes to charge into fire, there is no retreat. Fear of bullets may slow a man, fear of alien claws may break his will, but fear of the collar drives him forward, faster than survival ever could. And so the legionnaires march, not because they believe in the emperor, not because they seek redemption, but because the collar demands it. Every heartbeat is borrowed, every breath is conditional, and when they look upon one another, their eyes see not comrades, not men, but walking coffins with ticking bombs for locks. In this way, the collar becomes more than a weapon, it becomes a creed, a law, written in steel and fire, a reminder that for the penal legionnaire, death is not just inevitable, it is personal, intimate, and always waiting, just a single pulse away. The collar does more than kill, it rewires the soul. Long before the first battle, the condemned begin to feel it in their dreams. At night, when exhaustion drags them into uneasy sleep, the faint pressure around their throats transforms into a phantom grip. Many wake choking, clawing at the steel band, only to feel its cold certainty pressing back. The commissars laugh when they see it. Fear, they say, is a tool sharper than any blade. By dawn, the legionnaires have learned the ritual. Before they eat, before they clean their weapons, their hands rise instinctively to touch the collar, to make sure it is still there, to feel the humming reassurance that death has not yet chosen them. It becomes a prayer of sorts, a grotesque parody of faith, where a priest clutches a rosary, the condemned caress their chains.
The whispers never stop. What if it malfunctions? What if the signal reaches the wrong man? What if the emperor himself wills it to ignite while I sleep? Rumors spread faster than disease in the crowded camps. Some believe the collars are connected, each one part of a single vast circuit. If one man falters, the rest will explode together in a chorus of fire. Others insist that every thought is monitored, that to even dream of escape is to trigger the charge. None of it is true, none of it needs to be. In the Penal Legion, lies are as effective as bullets, yet there are always the bold, or the foolish, men who tug at the steel band when no one watches, men who scrape at it with stolen blades, desperate for freedom. But the collar is no ordinary shackle. Its casing is layered with sacred alloys, machines sealed by tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanica. The circuits inside are shielded, hidden, sacred. Even if by some miracle it were cracked open, the tampering itself would be read as betrayal, and betrayal is always answered by fire. The commissars encourage such attempts, though they never say it aloud. For every man who dies trying, 10 more fall silent, 10 more march with eyes lowered, hearts trembling. But the worst torment of all is not the threat of death, it is the theft of choice. Every Penal Legionnaire once had a plan, a hope, a scheme for survival. Now all of them march under the same law, obedience until the collar decides otherwise. Death is no longer an accident of war, no longer a risk of the battlefield. It is a sentence carried close, like a dagger pressed against the throat. On campaign this cruelty deepens. The collar is linked to vox beacons carried by overseers, ensuring the condemned remain within reach. Stray too far, and the signal fades. The collar begins to beep, first slow then faster, a warning. Few ever test it long enough to hear the final tone. In battle the device makes them fearless in the most unnatural way, not the courage of heroes, but the desperation of cornered beasts. When ordered to charge across no man's land, the Penal Legionnaires sprint not toward victory, but away from the collar's silent promise. They dive into trenches choked with corpses, their screams drowned out by gunfire, not because they seek glory, but because hesitation is suicide. And when victory is won, when the battlefield is quiet, the collars remain. The condemned drag their wounded bodies through the mud, their throats humming with death, knowing that even survival is conditional. Their reward for obedience is not freedom, it is another day alive, another night of terror, another chance to wake with that steel hand around their neck. Some whisper prayers to the Emperor, others curse his name, but all understand the same truth. The collar is not just a weapon of execution, it is a leash, and every man in the Penal Legion is a dog, running not toward redemption, but away from the merciless bite of the chain. The first battle comes without warning. One moment the Penal Legionnaires are herded through the mud, wrists chained together, collars humming faintly beneath the rain. The next, sirens cut through the dawn like razors, the ground shakes with distant artillery, overseers bellow command. The condemned are shoved forward, rifles thrust into their hands as though weapons could wash away sin. The air reeks of promethium and smoke, vox amplifiers blare from the rear lines, a commissar's voice booming across the field, "Advance! In the name of the Emperor, advance!" The collars answer before the men do. A sudden pulse surges through their necks, a sharp reminder that hesitation is treason. Dozens stumble into motion at once, coughing, clutching their rifles tight. Fear becomes a current flowing through every man. They are not charging the enemy out of loyalty, but fleeing the fire at their throats. Ahead lies no man's land, a torn wasteland of craters, barbed wire, and half-buried corpses. Heavy bolt of fire rips the earth open in brutal flashes. Every instinct screams to drop, to run, to hide, but the collars make that impossible. To pause is to disobey is to die, and so the Penal Legion runs headlong into the storm. Some fall immediately, torn apart by shells before they even clear the wire. Their bodies vanish into sprays of dirt and blood. Others leap into craters for cover, only to be dragged out by fellow prisoners, their collars flashing red, warning them to keep moving. The enemy guns roar like gods of war, cutting swathes through the advancing line, yet the line does not break. It cannot. Fear of the collar is greater than fear of the foe. At the rear the commissars watch through magnoculars. To them the carnage is proof of the system's brilliance. No hesitation, no retreat. Every man becomes ammunition, spent without weight. Even the tech priests murmur,
approval as they monitor the pulse of each collar on their Auspex screens, adjusting signals to keep the Legion in perfect formation. It is obedience made flesh, but the truth, felt only by those who run beneath the storm, is that obedience tastes like act. The Legionnaires are not soldiers, they are weapons, fired in volleys of flesh and bone. Every heartbeat is stolen, every step dictated. The gunfire ahead may kill them, but the collar leaves no choice but to run toward it. Some attempt defiance even here. A man stumbles, clutching his leg where shrapnel has torn it open. He cannot continue. He screams for mercy. The overseer at the rear does not hesitate. A single button press, and his collar erupts. The explosion is small, precise, just enough to remove his head in a cloud of gore. The rest of the Legion hardly notice. They cannot afford to. They keep running, always forward. When they reach the enemy trenches, their desperation becomes violent. Penal Legionnaires hurl themselves into the mud-choked ditches, stabbing with bayonets, beating with rifle butts, tearing at their foes with bare hands. The collars drive them forward, forcing savagery where discipline might have faltered. There is no retreat, no pause, no second thought. Only attack until the overseers are satisfied, or until death claims them. And when the battle finally ends, when the guns fall silent and the enemy lines are drenched in blood, the Penal Legion does not cheer. They do not cry out in victory. They only collapse where they stand, gasping, clutching their collars as though touching them might silence their hum. The commissars call it redemption. The soldiers call it survival.
But the Legionnaires know the truth. The collars have not only chained their bodies, they have chained their fate. Every battle will be the same. Obedience written in blood, survival purchased only by running faster, killing harder, fearing the device around their necks more than the armies before them. In the Penal Legion, there is no bravery, no cowardice, there is only the collar. The battle is over. Smoke drifts lazily over the broken ground, settling into the craters like fog on a poisoned sea. The air is thick with the smell of burnt flesh, scorched oil, and the copper tang of blood. For most soldiers, this is the moment of release, the chance to catch breath, to whisper a prayer, to remember that they are still alive. For the Penal Legion, there is no release. The collars still hum, their red lights blink steadily, indifferent to the carnage that surrounds them. Victory does not loosen the chains. Death still lingers at their throats, silent, waiting. The survivors lie sprawled in the mud, too exhausted to stand, too afraid to rest. They stare at the sky, watching vultures circle, half wondering if the Emperor himself looks down on them, or if he has already turned his gaze away. Commissars stride among the wounded, boots crushing broken helmets and spent casings. Their faces are unreadable masks of iron discipline. To them, this is not a graveyard, it is a ledger. Each corpse is a tally, each survivor a number to be used again. They bark orders for the living to rise, to drag the bodies of the fallen into heaps, to strip the dead of their weapons and ammunition. There are no funerals in the Penal Legion, only recycling. The dead are left to rot in shallow pits, nameless and unmarked. No hymns, no banners, no honor guard. Their only memorial is the faint hiss of the collars, still glowing faintly on their severed necks until the power cells fade. For the living, there is no reward. They are herded back behind the lines, her collars scanned by tech priests, who mutter binaric prayers as though tending to livestock. A few men collapse from exhaustion. They are left where they fall. If they wake, they wake. If not, the earth will claim them as it does all failure. That night, the Legionnaires sit in silence around their ration fires. No laughter, no stories, no boasts of kills, just hollow eyes reflecting the flames. The food is tasteless, the water stale, but none complain. Complaints are danger, a wrong word, a wrong tone, and the collar might judge them unworthy. Whispers still pass through the darkness, not of victory, but of dread. Men speak of those who died not from enemy fire, but from the overseer's hands, the one who begged for mercy, the one who stumbled too long, the one who dared to falter, each death a warning carved into memory. Some still cling to hope. They tell stories of redemption, of legionnaires who survived enough battles to earn their freedom. They imagine the day their collars might finally be removed, the cold weight lifted, the skin beneath free to breathe again, but most no longer believe. They have seen too many men survive a dozen wars, only to vanish in silence. No discharge papers, no parades, no proof of salvation, just absence, explained away with shrugs and lies. Perhaps they were freed, perhaps they were executed in secret, perhaps they simply marched until their bodies failed, and their collars gave them the only release they would ever know. As the fires die low, the legionnaires curl into the mud, shivering beneath ragged cloaks, listening to the hum at their throats. The collar is the last thing they feel before sleep takes them, and the first thing they touch when dawn drags them awake. The commissars call it control. The tech priests call it efficiency. But the men know what it truly is: slavery, disguised as service. And in that silence, beneath the stars that offer no comfort, one truth echoes louder than the rest. In the Penal Legion, victory does not set you free. It only proves that you are still useful, and tomorrow, the collar will march you forward again. The condemned are herded inside in chains, stripped of their rags, lined up shoulder to shoulder. The air hums with the static of Auspex machines, the low drone of tech priests chanting binaric prayers. No man speaks above a whisper. They know what awaits them. On a raised platform stands the device, the brand iron of the Legion, forged from sacred steel. Its head bears the insignia of damnation, a skull impaled on a blade, the mark of the condemned. It glows faintly from within, heated by arcane machinery that hums with power. The priests tend it as though it were an altar, their voices thick with ritual. Through pain, obedience, through blood, redemption, through the brand, the Emperor's will. One by one, the prisoners are dragged forward, their collars flash, pulsing red as though eager for the ritual to begin. A man kneels, his eyes wide with terror, his chest heaving. Two guards force his head back, baring the side of his face or the flesh of his arm. The iron descends. The scream that follows echoes like a hymn. The smell of burning skin fills the air, sharp and nauseating. The iron hisses as it sears flesh, leaving behind a blackened scar that will never fade. Some men thrash against their chains, biting down hard enough to crack teeth. Others collapse into silence, their minds retreating far from the pain, but all bear the mark. There is no exception. The brand is more than a punishment. It is a proclamation. From that moment onward, every legionnaire is marked as less than human. They are stripped of name, stripped of past, stripped of family, whatever they were before. Farmer, thief, soldier, heretic, is burned away. They are now only a number, a tool, a body for the Emperor's wars. The commissars take note as the line passes. They read the freshly branded flesh like a ledger, recording numbers into their data slates. To them, the condemned are no longer men. They are entries in a column, expendable units, measured not in worth but in how long they can survive. When the branding ends, the legionnaires are marched to their barracks, their wounds still raw, the smell of charred skin clinging to the air around them. Every breath burns, every step stings, yet the greatest wound is not on the flesh, but within. For the brand is not meant for enemy, it is not meant for strangers, it is meant for themselves. Each time they glimpse the scar on their arm, each time their reflection reveals the charred mark on their cheek, they are reminded of what they are: condemned, nameless, forgotten. No man can wash it away, no prayer can heal it. At night, when the legionnaires huddle in their bunks, some try to cover the brand with cloth, ashamed to let others see, but others do not hide. Some wear the mark like a badge of hatred, a reminder of vengeance against those who sentenced them. Some carve into the scar, deepening it until blood runs, trying to feel something beyond the emptiness, and some simply stare at it until tears fall. Tears they quickly hide, for weakness is never safe in the Penal Legion. The officers speak of redemption, of serving until freedom is earned, but the legionnaires know better. The brand is not a step toward salvation, it is a seal upon a coffin. It tells the world that they belong to death, that their only future lies in fire and blood. No man who bears it will ever again be welcomed home. It lingers, a mark etched deeper than skin, reshaping every glance, every word, every silence. In the barracks, men stare at each other differently after the ritual. Before, they were criminals, heretics, deserters. But at least their crimes were whispered, uncertain, hidden behind rumor. Now, with the brand seared into their flesh, the truth is undeniable. There is no escaping what they are. The mark makes them equal in damnation. But equality does not mean unity. Some wear the brand like armor, striding through the mud with their scarred flesh bare, daring anyone to challenge them. Others shrink into shadows, ashamed, wrapping cloth around the wound as though covering it might hide their fate. Fights erupt in the darkness, not over food or rations, but over what the mark means. Some claim it is proof of guilt. Others claim it is proof of injustice. None of it matters. The mark has the final word, even among the soldiers of the Imperial Guard. The brand carries weight. When penal legionnaires are marched past loyal regiments, the difference is plain. Regular soldiers avert their eyes, spit in the dirt, mutter prayers as the branded ones pass. They see not comrades, but cursed men. Men who fight not for glory, but because they are chained to war. Whispers spread in the ranks of the guard. Branded men bring misfortune, that their very presence invites the attention of daemons, that the emperor himself despises them, that their deaths are demanded to cleanse the battlefield. Superstition clings to the mark like a shadow, and every soldier who bears it feels the weight of 1,000 eyes. In the Penal Legion, even laughter sounds hollow. A joke dies quickly when the brand is revealed. A song breaks apart when men see the scar in the firelight. For what melody can outsing the truth carved into their flesh? The officers encourage this isolation. Commissars know that loneliness is as powerful a chain as the collar. A man without comrades is a man without rebellion. So they remind the legionnaires, again and again, that the brand is not just a mark of sin. It is a gift. Without it, they would not be alive. Without it, their crimes would have ended at the execution block. The brand, they claim, is proof that the emperor has given them a second chance. But the men know the lie. A second chance implies a future. The brand is not a bridge. It is a wall. It ensures that even if they survive 100 battles, even if their collars are removed, they will never be welcomed into the arms of their families, never be embraced as sons or brothers again. They will always be the branded. And so the mark grows heavier with time. When a legionnaire looks into a shard of broken mirror, he no longer sees the man he was. He sees the scar first, and only the scar. Memories of his life before, the streets of his homeworld, the faces of his kin, the sound of his own name, fade beneath the shadow of that burn. The brand rewrites his story. He is no longer a man who once lived. He is a prisoner, marked, numbered, forgotten. Some break beneath this weight. They fall into silence, speaking no words for weeks at a time. Others lash out, fists and blades raised against comrades, as if striking at the scar they all share. And some embrace it fully. They carve their numbers deeper, mutilating themselves to prove they no longer care. The Penal Legion is full of such broken echoes, men reshaped not by faith or discipline, but by a single mark burned into their flesh. The collar might kill the body, the battlefield might take the soul, but the brand ensures that nothing of the man remains. It is not just a scar, it is a verdict, and no verdict is ever lifted. The brand does not stay hidden in the barracks. It follows the Penal Legion onto the battlefield, where it becomes more than a scar. It becomes a banner. When the condemned march into war, their uniforms are stripped of insignia, their armor painted in dull grays and blacks. No colors, no heraldry, no regimental pride, only the brand marks them, burned deep into their flesh. The officers make sure of it. Helmets are often denied, sleeves are torn away. The scar must be visible to all. To the loyal soldiers of the guard, this serves as a reminder. These are not comrades, they are criminals, weapons dressed in human skin. When penal legionnaires charge ahead, every guardsman sees the brand and remembers that their lives are worth less than dirt. Their survival is optional, their deaths are mandatory. The Imperium calls it deterrence. Whispers travel fast among the ranks of ordinary soldiers. Commissars let the rumors spread unchecked, that the branded are sinners spared by the Emperor, only to bleed in his wars, that the mark itself is holy, sealing their crimes in flesh. So their deaths will serve as penance. For some,
This brings a twisted comfort. They see the legionnaires as sacrifices, their blood an offering to shield the faithful, but for the branded men themselves, the symbol is poison. On the front lines, enemies recognize it as well. The brand is visible even through the smoke of battle, burned across arms and faces. For heretics, it is a sign of hypocrisy, the Imperium using its criminals as fodder, while preaching purity. For Xenos, it is a curiosity, proof of humanity's cruelty toward its own. And for the legionnaires, it is simply another reason to fight with desperation, not to win honor, not to earn freedom, but to escape the shame carved into their flesh. The mark dictates tactics too. Penal legions are sent forward first, their branded bodies thrown into the teeth of enemy fire. Their charge breaks the minefields, their deaths reveal the ambushes, their blood softens the ground before the regular regiments advance. Commanders call it efficiency, the legionnaires call it slaughter. Even in victory, the brand ensures they are never mistaken for heroes. When banners are raised and hymns are sung, the Penal Legion is kept apart, their wounds untreated until the loyal soldiers are cared for. They are paraded not as warriors, but as warning. Sometimes, after a bloody victory, commissars march them through the conquered streets, their scars on full display. The citizens of the Imperium are made to watch, to whisper, to fear. This is what awaits you if you betray the Emperor. No medals are ever pinned to branded flesh. No names are etched into honor rolls. Their victories belong to others. Their deaths belong to silence. And yet, paradoxically, the brand binds them together. Among the damned, the scar becomes a common tongue. Legionnaires recognize each other, not by name, but by mark. In the moments between battles, when the collars hum, and the guns fall quiet, they trace the scars with dirty fingers, comparing the shapes, the burns, the lines. Each brand is identical, yet each carries its own story, the crime that led to it, the trial that ended in chains, the life burned away in a single moment of fire. But even this fragile bond is tainted, for the commissars remind them always, the brand is not a brotherhood, it is a chain. Any attempt to turn it into unity, into rebellion, will be punished by the same fire that gave it life. So the Penal Legion marches on, branded, nameless, faceless, to the Imperium. They are living propaganda, proof of what happens when loyalty falters. To their enemies, they are shadows, symbols of humanity's hypocrisy, and to themselves, they are reminders of the truth they cannot escape. The collar holds their bodies, the brand holds their souls. They tell themselves, it is only a scar, another wound among many, but the fire lingers long after the pain fades. It is not the skin that aches, it is the memory. Every time they catch sight of it, the world sharpens into a reminder of who they once were and what they have lost. Names begin to slip away. In the beginning, some whisper their names at night, clutching them like fragile relics. They scratch them into walls, into the dirt, into the rust of their chains. But commissars scour the camps, erasing every mark, punishing every attempt at remembrance. Soon the branded stop trying, their names rot on their tongues, replaced by numbers, collars and curses. The brand becomes the only identity left. The officers call them by it. Civilians flinch at the sight of it, and even fellow guardsmen glance at it. Before they look at their faces, the man is forgotten, the scar remains. Legionnaires speak to each other, not as brothers in arms, but as fellow branded, united only by their absence of self. Dreams are the cruelest torment. Many still dream of their old lives, of families, of cities, of freedom stolen. But in those dreams, the brand bleeds through. They see themselves as they once were, yet always, with the scar burning across their skin. Wives turn away, children recoil, friends laugh and vanish. Even in sleep, the brand mocks them. It is not a wound that heals, it is a voice that whispers, you are no longer who you were. Over time, some legionnaires embrace the loss. They strip away the remnants of their past, and give themselves wholly to the brand. These are the ones commissars favor, the broken souls who no longer fight for freedom, only for the release of death. They march faster into the guns, throw themselves more willingly into the jaws of war, because there is nothing left of them to say. They are the most dangerous, Not because they are skilled, but because they have become empty. Others resist. They cling to memory with bitter defiance. They carve their names into their own flesh, beneath the brand, letting blood and scar tissue mingle. They whisper their crimes proudly, daring the Imperium to silence them again. Some even see the brand as a lie, a false mark, imposed by tyrants, and dream of carving it away, of tearing the flesh, until nothing remains but raw, nameless ruin. But the Imperium has accounted for all of this. The collars hum, the commissars watch, the brand endures. Whether the legionnaire embraces it or rejects it, the outcome is the same. The past is erased, the future denied. The Imperium does not need men, it needs bodies, and the brand ensures that is all the Penal Legion can ever be. The cruelty lies not in death, but in survival. Every battle leaves fewer alive, and those who remain are not celebrated, not remembered, not redeemed. They are branded still, marched to the next war, chained to the next slaughter. Some begin to wonder if the Emperor himself remembers them at all, or if their deaths feed only silence. In the end, the brand is no longer just a scar, it is the erasure of self, the annihilation of memory. The legionnaires do not die as they die as the branded, nameless, faceless, reduced to ash before the Imperium's endless war. And the cruelest truth of all, the brand outlives the body. Flesh burns, bones shatter, blood dries in the dust, but the scar, carved into countless others, endures across centuries. Each new legionnaire receives it, each new criminal bears it. The brand is eternal, carried not by one man, but by all who fall into the Emperor's shadow. One mark, infinite graves. Authority in the Penal Legion is absolute. It begins with the commissars, men and women who walk the line between justice and terror. Their boots echo across the mud as they pace the ranks, eyes scanning every man, every twitch, every hesitation. In their hands are pistols, not weapons for battle, but instruments of obedience. One snap of the trigger, one harsh sentence spoken aloud, and a legionnaire's life ends in a flash of fire. Orders are not suggestions, they are inevitabilities. Hesitation is disobedience, and disobedience is death. The hierarchy is enforced not with speeches or ideology, but with calculated fear. Each officer knows the limits of his authority. Each soldier knows his place. A Penal Legionnaire's eyes dart constantly to the officers, to the commissars, to the tech priests, searching for the smallest hint that he has done wrong, that he has displeased the unseen masters. Every twitch, every flinch, every word is monitored. The collars hum in tandem with the overseer's commands. Each pulse is a reminder. Obey or die. There is no ambiguity, no room for mercy. The commissars do not care about past crimes. They do not care about valor, skill, or endurance. The only measure is compliance. A man may survive 20 battles, kill 100 enemies, yet one moment of hesitation is enough to trigger the flash. To falter in the slightest is to forfeit life, and often the lives of those around him as a lesson to the rest. Yet control is not purely violent. Commissars use rituals, inspection, and constant scrutiny to break individuality. They march the men endlessly, demanding precision, drilling obedience into muscle memory. Even in silence, a misaligned stance or a lowered gaze can invite punishment. Every gesture is recorded by the eyes of the officers, and every thought is guessed from posture and expression. Tech priests enforce a different kind of discipline. They tend the collars, monitor the biosigns of the condemned, and adjust signals to maintain perfect alignment between orders and movement. Their machines are extensions of the commissar's will, invisible overseers that hum beneath every skin, dictating step, breath, and heartbeat. The hierarchy thrives on terror, but also on ritual. Morning roll calls, weapon inspections, collar calibrations, and battle briefings are all ceremonies designed to remind the legionnaires of their place. Even a moment of rest is structured, even sleep is regimented. Every day, every hour, every breath belongs not to the man, but to the chain of command that governs him. Within this structure, personality dies. Old habits, old preferences, Old thoughts, all are crushed. A penal legionnaire speaks only when allowed, he moves only when ordered, he feels only the fear of the collar and the will of those above. Individuality is dangerous, thought is dangerous, and yet paradoxically, the hierarchy ensures survival. Those who obey, even mechanically, live longer. Those who resist, even subtly, die quickly, and those who survive long enough to internalize the chain of command become the most efficient soldiers imaginable, unhesitating, relentless, unbroken in body, though shattered in mind. The true power of the commissars lies not in guns, not in authority, but in perception. A single gaze is enough to drive a man forward into fire. A word, whispered into the ranks, can ignite panic, or courage in equal measure. The hierarchy is a living organism, fed by obedience, sustained by fear, perfected by control, and the collars enforce it. Even the slightest doubt, hesitation or defiance, triggers their hum. It reminds the legionnaires of what happens when chains fail. It makes the authority of the commissar tangible, inescapable, intimate. The chain of command is not a metaphor in the Penal Legion. It is steel against skin, fire against flesh, and a shadow over every thought. The men do not think of loyalty, they do not think of courage, they think only of survival. Measured in steps, measured in obedience, measured in the pulse of the collar against their throat, and in that obedience, the commissars thrive. The battlefield does not forgive hesitation. As the Penal Legion is pushed forward into the smoke-choked trenches and shattered wastelands, the commissars move among them like specters of judgment. Boots clack against mud, voices boom over vox amplifiers, and the flash of pistols is never far. The soldiers cannot escape their gaze, not with bullets whistling past, not with Xenos claws tearing at their ranks. A single faltering step is enough. A man trips over a corpse, his rifle tangling with barbed wire. He struggles to rise, but the commissar is already there. One word, shouted sharp across the din: obey. The soldier freezes, his collar pulses violently, a reminder that hesitation is not tolerated. Another twitch, and a shot rings out. A warning. Heads turn, hearts hammer. The lesson is clear. Life depends on obedience. Orders cascade down the line with ruthless efficiency. Advance, fire, hold, charge. Each command accompanied by the ever-present threat of instant execution. Even seasoned legionnaires, hardened by training and past battles, feel the weight of authority pressing in from every angle. The commissars do not merely supervise, they orchestrate fear. When a squad falters, the officers single out one man to die, a living example of the cost of defiance. The collars flash, the pulse surges, and a body is consumed in a silent, controlled explosion. The remaining men surge forward with renewed desperation, propelled not by loyalty, not by courage, but by the terror of the chain around their necks. Tech priests amplify this terror. They monitor vital signs, adjusting collar signals to intensify fear, ensuring that even the bravest soldier cannot pause. The field hums with a rhythm dictated by collars and overseers, a symphony of life and death, where every heartbeat is timed to the cadence of control. In the heat of combat, the hierarchy becomes visible. Officers stand apart, surveying the carnage, their eyes calculating. Cold, commissars patrol the flanks, stepping over bodies without hesitation, their pistols ready, their authority absolute. No man in the Penal Legion raises a finger without consent. Even the roar of artillery is secondary to the voice of command. The truly terrifying lesson comes in the intervals of silence between orders, when guns fall quiet for a heartbeat, when smoke curls like fingers around the trenches. The legionnaires are reminded of their collars and the eyes of the officers. Even in stillness, obedience must be maintained. Any lapse in posture, any slackening of attention, invites immediate correction. Yet the hierarchy does not merely punish, it sustains. It binds the legionnaires to survival. In the midst of chaos, the chain of command offers structure. A clear order can mean the difference between life and death, and following it blindly can extend that life, even by hours. Those who internalize the rhythm of authority move faster, strike harder, and endure longer than those who resist. The battlefield is not a place of glory for the Penal Legion, it is a stage for obedience. Every victory, every push into enemy lines, every captured trench, is proof of control, not of skill. The commissars measure success in compliance, not valor, and yet paradoxically, this fear-forged hierarchy creates warriors unlike any other. Branded, collared, broken. They fight with an intensity born of desperation. They survive when ordinary soldiers would fall. They charge when others would hesitate. They endure when hope has long since died. The chain of command is unrelenting. It is merciless. It is necessary. For in the Penal Legion, survival is measured not by courage or conviction, but by obedience to the collar and the iron will of those above. The battlefield ends. The guns fall silent. Smoke drifts into the sky, but the chains of command do not loose. Back in the camp, the same eyes that watched over the trenches now patrol the rows of tents and bunks. Commissars stride between the sleeping, the wounded and the weary, their presence enough to straighten spines and quicken breaths. The collars hum in quiet reminder. The oversight is unbroken, relentless, even in rest. The men are prisoners of authority. Rations are meted out according to obedience, not need. Those who faltered on patrol, who hesitated under orders, receive less food. Those who maintain strict compliance, who never question, are granted the smallest favor, a slightly larger portion, a moment's warmth near the fire. It is never enough. Hunger becomes another instrument of control, another reminder that every privilege in the Penal Legion is borrowed at the price of servitude. Discipline extends to every action. Soldiers rise at the sound of the horn, line up for inspection, and maintain silence until permission to speak is given. Beds are made to exact standards, weapons cleaned with precision, collars checked and calibrated daily. Even in these mundane tasks, failure is noted, recorded, punished. Every act is a test. Every omission carries weight. The psychological pressure is constant. Commissars enforce it with words as sharp as their pistols. A single glance can break a man's resolve. They speak of duty, of penance, of the Emperor's will, reminding the Legionnaires that they are expendable, that their only value lies in continued obedience. Isolation amplifies this pressure. Social bonds are discouraged. Brotherhood is a dangerous distraction. The Penal Legion survives not on camaraderie, but on fear. Drilled into muscle and mind, even minor infractions are exploited. A stumble while carrying rations, a misaligned weapon, a whispered complaint, each is observed, logged and punished with swift severity. Collars flash, a pulse of warning, a reminder of who truly holds power. The hierarchy thrives because it is internalized. Men obey not just because they fear the commissars, but because the fear has been woven into their very thought. They anticipate punishment before it comes, correct themselves before command is issued, suppress instincts that might be considered independent. The chain of command becomes a second skin, indistinguishable from the collar at their throat.
But the system is merciless. There is no respite. A day's march, a night's watch, an endless cycle of orders and obedience creates soldiers who move with uncanny precision, yet whose humanity is all but erased. They are shadows of men, animated by fear, molded by the iron fist of hierarchy, and welded to collars that dictate both body and mind. Occasionally a man breaks, perhaps from hunger, perhaps from exhaustion, perhaps from the unbearable pressure of constant oversight. His screams are short-lived. The commissar responds with efficiency. A shot, a reprimand, a pulse from the collar that reminds everyone else to remain obedient. The hierarchy does not flinch. It does not hesitate. It is absolute. By the end of each day, the Penal Legionnaires understand a truth deeper than fear or pain. Survival is not a matter of courage. It is a measure of submission. The chain of command ensures that the living remain alive, but only by ensuring that every thought, every movement, every breath belongs to the Imperium, and so they rise each morning, march each mile, fight each battle, and endure each punishment. They obey because disobedience means death. They endure because obedience allows them to survive, and even survival is a form of slavery. In the Penal Legion, hierarchy is not just a system, it is the air they breathe, the rhythm of their hearts, and the pulse that drives their every step. Without it, they would crumble. With it, they march into death as one, collared and branded, shadows of men bound to the will of the few who hold all power. The hierarchy is ritualized. Every sunrise begins with inspection. Boots pound the mud in time with orders. Rifles are raised, polished, inspected. The commissars walk the lines, pistols in hand, eyes scanning, fingers twitching for triggers. The men do not move independently. Their steps are dictated, their gestures timed. Even in silence, obedience is measured. Mistakes are opportunity. A rifle left slightly crooked, a uniform thread out of place, a footstep off rhythm, all are punished. The collar pulses in warning or in pain, reinforcing the lesson. A single lapse may be minor, but it is recorded. Repetition guarantees the ultimate lesson, perfection or death. Punishment is ritualized as well. It is not chaos, it is deliberate. A man who hesitates is pulled forward before the ranks. He may be struck down instantly, his collar exploding in a brief flash. Others are forced to witness, to remember, to internalize the cost of failure. Discipline is a spectacle, designed to burn obedience into the mind as effectively as the brand burns flesh. Even survival is ritualized. Food, water, rest and movement are all governed by the hierarchy. Every privilege is earned through compliance, measured by fear, maintained by ritual. There is no spontaneity, there is no choice. A legionnaire who forgets to bow his head to the officer, who eats too slowly, who sleeps too long, is reminded that life is conditional, not guaranteed. Through these ceremonies, obedience becomes instinct. Fear fuses with survival, creating a rhythm that dominates body and mind. The men no longer need to hear commands, they anticipate them, guided by the cadence of punishment and reward, by the hum of the collar, by the unyielding gaze of the commissar. And yet, the hierarchy is more than control. It is a mirror of the legionnaire's own despair. They obey because they must, because every breath, every heartbeat, every pulse of the collar demands it. Loyalty is a byproduct of fear. Reverence is born from the inevitability of punishment. And over time, the men come to accept that they are no longer masters of their actions. They are instruments of the system, molded by ritual, maintained by terror. The chain of command shapes them more thoroughly than any battlefield. Here amid the mud, the blood and the smoke, they learn that the true enemy is not the Xenos or the heretic, but the self. Doubt, hesitation, and defiance are not flaws, they are death sentences. The hierarchy ensures that the body survives only as long as the mind submits completely. By nightfall, the lessons are ingrained. The men stand silent, eyes hollow, collars humming faintly in the dark. They do not speak unless spoken to. They do not move unless ordered. They exist in measured breaths, controlled by fear, bound by ritual, and governed by the absolute authority that will never falter. And the commissars watch, unsmiling, relentless, eternal. They know that every man who survives this day is not a hero, he is a product, a tool, a shadow, a being conditioned to obey without question. And tomorrow, the ritual begins again. Sunrise, inspection, march, obedience, punishment, a cycle unbroken, as endless as war itself. The true victory of the hierarchy is invisible. It does not lie in the obedience of a single soldier or the survival of a unit. It lies in the total submission of spirit, in the quiet acceptance of slavery, in the realization that no man of the Penal Legion is ever free. And as the firelight flickers across the hollow eyes of the branded and collared, one fact becomes undeniable. In the Penal Legion, the chains of command are eternal. They govern not just action, but thought, not just body, but soul. Obedience is survival, survival is slavery, and the cycle never ends. The march never ends. Dawn breaks over a landscape scarred by fire, mud, and the bodies of the fallen. The Penal Legion rises with the sound of horns, collars humming faintly in warning. Feet hit the mud in measured rhythm, rifles slung over shoulders, packs weighed down with rations, gear and the invisible burden of despair. There is no rest. There is no leisure. There is only forward, step after step, mile after mile, into the teeth of war. The landscape stretches endlessly, a wasteland that mirrors the emptiness inside each man. They march past shell-pocked fields, past burned-out villages, past forests hollowed by artillery. Every horizon promises nothing but more death, more pain, more change. The men move in silence, but the silence is alive. It hums with the memory of screams, of comrades torn apart, of the bodies they have left behind. Each step reminds them that survival is temporary, and that the next moment may be their last. The commissars walk among them, pistols ready, eyes scanning. One faltering step, one slackened gait, one whispered complaint, and the collar reacts, a pulse of pain, a reminder that hesitation is death. The men do not speak, they do not complain, they do not breathe freely. Each breath is a negotiation with survival. Rations are minimal. Water is scarce. Sleep comes in fragments, snatched on the edge of exhaustion. Yet the march continues. The men push forward, not for glory, not for honor, but because the chain of command, the collars, and the commissars will not allow them to stop. Death walks alongside them, the wounded limp forward, supported by comrades, or dragged by invisible threads of duty. The dead are left behind, in shallow graves, nameless, unremarked, their absence serving as a constant warning. Survival is not victory, it is merely a temporary reprieve. Each day the march stretches longer, the terrain harsh, rivers swollen with rain, mountains jagged and treacherous, deserts that scorch the skin. The Penal Legion endures, because it must, because the Emperor demands obedience, because the collars remind them that a single misstep can bring death in an instant. And yet, despite exhaustion, despite hunger, despite fear, the march has its rhythm. Feet move in perfect cadence, rifles swing in time, breaths rise and fall in synchrony. The men become a living machine, stripped of individuality, welded to the purpose of survival, driven by the pulse of their collars and the gaze of their officers. Commissars enforce this rhythm with brutal efficiency. A man falters, and a pistol bark cracks the silence. A squad lags, and a pulse of pain courses through their collars, reminding them that forward is the only option. The system is unyielding. It does not tire. It does not hesitate. It transforms human beings into instruments of war, moving relentlessly toward an end they may never see. And yet, even in the horror of the march, moments of quiet terror emerge. Men glance at corpses along the way, at the broken weapons, at the scorched earth. They see shadows that were once comrades, faces that were once friends. The line between life and death blurred. Fear and fatigue twist the mind, and still, they march, because stopping is not an option. The march is survival. Survival is obedience, and obedience is the only law the Penal Legion knows. Every step is a testament to the power of the chain, every mile a monument to the relentless control that shapes their lives. And in this endless progression toward death, one truth becomes undeniable. In the Penal Legion, the road never ends, and the men who walk it are already shadows of the lives they once lived. The march is not merely a test of the body, it is a war on the mind. Hours stretch into days, days into weeks, and the landscape seems endless. Mud, ash, and shattered stone, as far as the eye can see. Each footstep presses not just into earth, but into memory, into fear, into despair. The men feel it in every muscle, in every joint, in every beat of the collar, pulsing against their throats. Their minds wander to distant homes, faces they will never see again, yet guilt and shame follow them more relentlessly than the commissars ever could. Sleep is stolen in fragments, a few breaths here, a half hour there. In dreams the march does not end. Corpses rise to accuse them, fires flare in impossible patterns, collars hum without pause. The line between reality and nightmare blurs until waking feels no different than dreaming, and both are unbearable. Hunger gnaws at them constantly, Rations are scarce and monotonous. Water runs thin, yet even when the body screams for relief, the march continues. There is no pause, no slowing, no reprieve. To stop is to invite death, either from the battlefield, the commissar, or the relentless pulse of the collar. Hunger becomes another chain, tightening its hold on mind and body alike. Fear is a constant companion. The men know that death can come in 1,000 forms: a stray shell, a Xenos ambush, the snap of a commissar's pistol, the flash of a collar in pain mode. Each step carries the weight of uncertainty, each glance toward the horizon a calculation of survival. They walk not toward victory, but away from immediate annihilation, their every choice constrained by the infinite possibility of death. The loss of comrades amplifies the horror. A man falls in front of them, shot, crushed, impaled, and the line does not pause. Some reach down to drag a body, only to be reminded by a commissar's glare that hesitation is fatal. Faces vanish into mud and blood, names forgotten before they can even be whispered. The survivors internalize the lesson: to care is to die, to hesitate is to die, to stop is to die. Human connection becomes a liability, and every man learns to suppress the flicker of empathy within his chest. Yet, paradoxically, bonds are still formed, fragile and fleeting. Shared misery fosters whispers, fleeting glances, a quiet touch in the dead of night, to remind another that they still exist. But these moments are always under the shadow of the chain. A whisper can become a confession, a glance can become a liability. The commissars see everything. The collars hum in warning. Survival demands vigilance. Even in companionship, the psychological erosion is cumulative. Memory becomes unreliable. Identity fades. Men forget their own names, their pasts, their homes. They know only the march, the orders, the collar, the endless forward motion. Their sense of self is replaced by rhythm, step, pulse, obey. Life is measured in cadence, in compliance, in the faint hum of the collar. Even courage transforms into something unrecognizable. It is no longer bravery, but obedience executed perfectly under extreme duress. Fear and instinct are melded into machine-like precision. A soldier moves not because he chooses to, but because the hierarchy and collars have programmed the action into every muscle. And through it all, death walks beside them, sometimes silent, sometimes roaring. The men step over corpses, past mangled weapons, through fields turned to slaughterhouses, yet they march, again and again, driven by fear, by habit, and by the relentless command that nothing else matters. By the end of each day, the Penal Legion is a line of shadows, bodies moving mechanically, faces hollowed by exhaustion and terror, minds honed to obedience. The march has won, not by killing, but by erasing individuality, eroding memory, and replacing thought with rhythm. Each man survives only as long as he obeys, and in doing so becomes less and less himself. The march is survival. The march is fear. The march is death, made slow, deliberate, and inescapable. The horizon trembles with fire and smoke. The Penal Legion marches into the valley, mud sucking at boots, collars humming against skin, hearts hammering with anticipation and fear. Ahead lies the enemy, a cluster of Xenos, grotesque and alien, their eyes glinting with malice. Artillery has carved the earth into scarred gullies, and the stench of decay is thick in the air. Orders are given with precision: forward, fire, advance. Each word is mirrored by the collar, each pulse reinforcing the necessity of movement. Hesitation is unthinkable. Survival depends not on bravery, but on exact compliance with the chain of command. The first volley erupts. Bullets tear the mud, shells explode, and the screams of men are swallowed by chaos. The branded step forward without flinching, rifles raised, bodies moving with mechanical accuracy. Fear courses through them, but it is tempered by the collar, by the commissar, by the endless training drilled into every fiber. Obedience is instinct, and instinct saves lives. Sometimes, a squad falters. One man trips over the body of a comrade. He hesitates, lifts his rifle too slowly.
The commissar is upon him in a heartbeat, pistol raised, eyes cold and unyielding. The collar pulses violently, pain floods nerves, but the lesson is immediate. Hesitation is death. The man moves again, forced forward by terror, until he is swallowed by the advancing tide. The enemy counters with a savage strike. Claws tear at armor, alien weapons rend flesh. Panic could have spread, but the hierarchy is flawless. Each man knows his place. Every step, every shot, every breath is dictated by command. There is no room for hesitation, no space for thought beyond survival and obedience. Yet death is everywhere. Limbs are torn, faces crushed, screams echo across the valley. The collars hum in warning, enforcing movement even as bodies collapse. The commissars patrol relentlessly, shooting the weak, punishing the slow, reminding the survivors that life is granted only to those who obey. In this chaos, the branded transform into a force unlike any other. They move as one, a grim machine of flesh and fear, stepping over corpses, firing without pause, obeying commands with terrifying precision. Fear drives efficiency, pain drives speed. The knowledge that hesitation equals death makes them unstoppable, yet profoundly hollow. Some falter internally. They glimpse the dead around them, hear the cries of the dying, feel the alien heat of the battlefield. For a moment, memory flickers, a thought of home, of a mother's face, a past life stolen, but the collar pulses. The commissar's voice cuts through the storm, and a moment dies. Obedience reclaims the mind, erasing all hesitation, all remembrance, all humanity. By the end of the engagement, the valley is littered with the dead and dying. The enemy has been repelled, but at immense cost. The Penal Legion is diminished, bodies torn, faces scarred, spirits hollow. Yet the survivors stand. They are still collared, still branded, still marching. Victory in the Penal Legion is not measured in glory. It is measured in obedience maintained under fire. It is measured in how many survive, not how many fight. And in the grim silence that follows, the commissars remind the men of what is expected. Rest is temporary, survival is conditional, and the march resumes with no pause for mourning, no pause for grief, no pause for human sorrow. Death walks beside the legionnaires always, yet they continue. Obedience, fear, and a relentless chain of command carry them forward into the next engagement, into the next valley, into the next field of corpses. The march is endless, the battle is endless, and the Penal Legion endures, not because they are brave, but because they obey. The battle ends, but the war does not. Smoke curls across the valley like fingers, carrying the stench of blood, charred flesh, and the alien tang of Xenos weaponry. The survivors stumble through mud and corpses, collars humming faintly, reminders that even in victory, obedience is demanded. The dead are left unburied, their faces blank, their names erased, before they can be spoken aloud. Legionnaires drag themselves to the rear, bodies bruised, muscles screaming, minds fraying, yet there is no reprieve. Commissars pace the lines, eyes sharp, pistols ready. One faltering step, one pause to grieve, one whispered complaint, and a collar reacts, a jolt of pain reminding them that survival is conditional. Grief is a luxury they cannot afford. The psychological scars run deeper than the physical wound. The men replay the screams, the death, the faces of comrades torn apart. Sleep offers no escape. The battle continues in dreams, replayed in horrifying detail. Memory twists, blending the living and the dead, the past and the present, until clarity is drowned in fear. Yet the march must continue. Dawn will come, and with it new orders, new terrain, new enemies. There is no pause for mourning, no ceremony for the fallen. Obedience is measured in the willingness to rise again, to continue walking into death, to follow commands despite every fiber of exhaustion and terror. Some walk mechanically, bodies broken but minds trained to obey. Others falter, haunted by ghosts, whispers of their past lives, the faces of those they could not save. A single glance backward is enough for a pulse of the collar, a reminder that hesitation is fatal, that the chain of command is unbroken, that survival requires suppression of every human impulse. Even the victorious feel hollow. The valley bears witness to what has been lost. Limbs, blood, ash, and mud form a grotesque tapestry of obedience and suffering, yet the commissars do not hesitate. They remind the survivors that the march continues, the hierarchy must be maintained, the collars must hum, the men must obey. Survival is not a reward, it is a condition. Life is temporary, dictated by obedience, measured in steps forward, and sustained only by the rhythm of the chain. Each man knows that the next battle will be worse, that the next march will be longer, that death walks beside them, as surely as their own shadows, and yet they march step by step, breath by breath, driven by fear, by ritual, by the unyielding structure of the commissars and the collars. Memory, identity, and humanity are secondary to survival, and the march teaches this lesson with unrelenting consistency. By nightfall, the men are shadows, hollowed faces, branded and collared, moving in silence through the ash-strewn valley. The landscape is scarred, their bodies are broken, and their minds are frayed, but the chain endures, the collars hum, the commissars watch. Life persists, but only as obedience, only as compliance, only as continuation of the march. The Penal Legion is not a story of heroism, it is a testament to endurance under tyranny, a chronicle of survival dictated by fear and control. Each day, each battle, each step forward reinforces the absolute truth. The march never ends, the chain of command is eternal, and in the Penal Legion, death is always close, obedience is always required, and the next step is never optional. And so they rise again at dawn, collared, branded, haunted, and obedient. The march continues, the war continues, the cycle of survival, fear and command is unbroken, and the men of the Penal Legion endure, shadows of what they once were, driven solely by the rhythm of obedience and the unyielding will of the Imperium. Flames leap from shattered buildings, twisted vehicles, and scorched earth. The scent of ozone, blood, and charred flesh hangs thick, choking those who survive. The Penal Legion moves through it like shadows, collared and branded, bodies honed by fear and training, minds blunted by endless obedience. Combat is a symphony of violence, the crack of lasguns, the roar of artillery, the scream of the dying. It is unceasing, overwhelming, relentless. Every step forward is soaked in fire, every breath tastes of ash, every heartbeat thrums with anticipation and terror. The legionnaires engage in close combat, chain swords bite, las pistols flash, and the bodies of the enemy fall in grotesque patterns. Blood splashes across faces and armor, flesh tears, bones shatter, and the smell of burning skin mixes with gunpowder and mud. There is no glory here, only survival, raw, brutal, unfiltered survival dictated by the chain of command. The commissars patrol the front, pistols ready, eyes cold. One falter, one hesitation, one moment of doubt, and the collar punishes instantly. Pain is immediate, sharp, and instructive. Obedience is enforced not through rhetoric, but through flesh, through fear, through the hum of the collars, against throats and skin. The men do not fight for honor, they fight because not fighting equals death. The enemy is not an abstract foe, it is the immediate, visceral threat that demands action. Every swing, every shot, every movement is precise, rehearsed and brutal. There is no hesitation, no questioning, only the instinct carved into muscle and mind by relentless training, terror and ritual. Amid the carnage, the human mind begins to erode, faces blur, screams merge, pain becomes background noise. The men become vessels for violence, conduits for the Imperium's will, instruments of destruction, sharpened by fear. They feel less, think less, exist only to execute orders, to obey, to survive. Comrades fall beside them. The scream of a friend, torn apart by Xenos claws, echoes in the ears of the survivors. A glance backward reveals the horror. Yet there is no time to mourn. The commissar's voice cuts through, a harsh reminder that life continues only if obedience persists. The collar's hum, commanding movement, reinforcing the rhythm of the battlefield. Even victory is hollow. The ground is littered with bodies, the air thick with smoke and blood. The enemy is dead, but so too is part of the Penal Legion's humanity. Each swing of the chain sword, each trigger pulled, each life taken erodes memory, emotion and identity. The soldiers are shadows, performing the macabre dance of fire and flesh, dictated by the unyielding hierarchy. Yet they endure, they continue forward. Fear drives them, obedience sustains them. The fire burns, the flesh is torn, and the march of death continues. In the heart of the inferno, they learn the deepest lesson of the Penal Legion. Survival is measured not in skill or courage, but in the ability to obey, to endure, and to move forward, when every instinct screams to stop. In this crucible, the men of the Penal Legion are forged into weapons. Flesh and bone are instruments, blood and pain are fuel. Obedience is both armor and chains. The battlefield does not forgive, but it teaches, it molds, it erases the self, and replaces it with relentless precision, terrifying efficiency, and a hollow endurance that will carry them into the next inferno. And still, amid fire and flesh, the commissars watch, collars hum, and the Penal Legion marches on, unbroken in body, hollowed in mind, bound by terror, and sustained only by obedience. A young legionnaire trips over a corpse, mud and blood caking his armor. His heart hammers, a reflexive shiver of panic coursing through him. The commissar is already there, pistol raised, eyes cold and unyielding. The collar pulses sharply, pain surging through his nerves. He forces himself up, jaw clenched, muscles trembling. Every step now is a negotiation between instinct and obedience. The instinct to flee, the obedience to march forward into fire. Nearby, another soldier clutches his gun, fingers slick with blood. He has just witnessed a friend's head torn apart by alien claws. His mind screams to stop, to scream, to collapse. But the chain of command overrides every thought. The pulse of the collar reminds him that hesitation is death. He raises his weapon again, fires without aim, and moves forward. Survival is measured in obedience, not in heroism. The screams of the wounded are relentless. Some call out for help that will never come. Others beg for mercy that does not exist. The Penal Legion cannot afford compassion. The hierarchy punishes hesitation, even empathy, because emotion is a weakness the enemy can exploit. Comrades fall beside each other, bodies twisted, faces hollowed. Each step over the fallen is a lesson. To care is to risk death. To falter is to perish. To survive is to obey. Yet courage flickers in fleeting, desperate forms. A soldier shields a comrade from a blast, ignoring the pain of shrapnel tearing his flesh. Another throws himself into the path of a charging Xenos to protect the line. These moments are rare, born not of glory, but of instinct and training fused with fear. Even courage is measured by obedience, the ability to act when hesitation would mean death. Pain is constant, limbs are burned, blood mixes with mud, eyes sting from smoke and ash. The collar's pulse, reminding every man that weakness is lethal. A misstep, a groan, a pause to catch breath, all are punished swiftly and brutally. The Penal Legion is refined by suffering. The more pain endured, the more precise and obedient the soldier becomes. Yet the psychological toll is insidious. The survivors see friends die in unimaginable ways. The screams haunt them. The smell of blood and burning flesh clings to their sense. Memories of life before the Legion fade, replaced by the rhythm of orders, the pulse of the collar, and the relentless need to survive. The battlefield is a teacher, but its lessons are cruel. Obedience over all, fear over emotion, survival over humanity. Through it all, the commissars remain relentless. They patrol, watch, judge. Their presence turns hesitation into death, fear into motion, despair into obedience. Every pulse of the collar, every sharp word, every glance is a reminder. Life persists only through compliance. Even the bravest soldier is nothing without obedience. By the end of the engagement, the battlefield is a mosaic of pain, fear and hollow survival. Some bodies lie twisted, some stagger forward, collared and branded, faces blank yet eyes glimmering with raw, instinctive calculation. The fire and flesh have stripped them down to the essentials: movement, obedience, endurance. Human thought is a luxury they can no longer afford, and yet, they endure. They march forward, step by step, each footfall a testament to the fusion of fear, obedience, and relentless training. The fire has burned their bodies, the flesh has been torn, the mind has been hollowed, but they continue. The commissars watch, the collars hum, the Penal Legion survives. Shadows of men transformed into instruments of relentless precision. In the crucible of fire and flesh, the deepest truth becomes undeniable. In the Penal Legion, survival is not about courage, valor, or heroism. It is about obedience, endurance, and the ability to move forward. When every instinct screams to stop, the battlefield falls silent. But the echoes of violence linger. Smoke rises from shattered vehicles, scorched earth, and smoldering corpses. The air is thick with ash, gunpowder, and the iron scent of blood. The Penal Legion moves through this ruin, collared and branded, bodies battered, faces hollow, minds frayed. Each step is heavy with fatigue, yet the chain of command drives them onward. Rest is brief, obedience is constant, and survival is measured in continued compliance. The wounded crawl, clutching broken limbs, blood mingling with mud. Comrades help them, if only to keep the line moving, to maintain the rhythm dictated by collars and commissars. There is no solace here, only function. Pain is a teacher, but its lessons are unforgiving. Every groan, every falter, every hesitation is a reminder. Obedience is life, weakness is death. The survivors gather what they can salvage: weapons, ammunition, water rations. Their movements efficient, mechanical. Commissars patrol the area, pistols in hand, eyes unblinking. One step out of line, one falter in pace, one pause to grieve, and the collar responds with a shock of pain. Discipline is absolute, fear is omnipresent, and survival is conditioned.
Silence falls between moments of command. The men glance at the fallen, some faces familiar, some nameless, all reminders of mortality. Memory flickers briefly, a childhood face, a mother's voice, a home long abandoned, but the collar interrupts, the commissar commands, and the thought is extinguished. Obedience reclaims the mind, erasing doubt, erasing grief, erasing humanity. Rations are handed out sparingly, water is rationed, and sleep comes in fragments. The men do not rest, they endure. The hierarchy dictates every motion: when to eat, when to drink, when to tend wounds, when to march. There is no leisure, no reflection, no freedom. Even solace is a privilege measured by obedience and reinforced by fear. Comrades whisper in fleeting moments, but even this is dangerous. A glance, a murmur, a gesture of empathy. All are watched. Collars hum, warning pulses surge. Survival demands suppression of every human instinct, every flicker of sentiment. The march of death resumes, relentless and unyielding, leaving no space for grief, no time for sorrow, no room for memory. The psychological toll is visible in hollow eyes, trembling hands, and the mechanical cadence of movement. Men march on instinct and conditioning, bodies trained to obey, minds trained to survive at any cost. Fear, exhaustion, and the memory of fire and flesh have forged soldiers who are precise, efficient, and terrifyingly hollow. Yet the lesson of the day is clear: the battle may be over, but the war never ends. The commissars will demand forward motion at first light. The collars will remind the men that hesitation is fatal. The march resumes before the men have time to mourn, before the wounded have fully healed, before memory has recovered even partially. Survival is measured by compliance, not courage. Life is dictated by obedience, not valor. And so the Penal Legion endures, step by step, breath by breath, collared, branded, hollowed by fire and flesh, yet driven ever forward by the unyielding chain of command. Each man is a shadow of the self he once knew, yet each step forward is proof of the terrifying efficiency that fear, obedience, and relentless command have forged. The battlefield is a crucible, and the men who walk from it are no longer men in the fullest sense. They are instruments, weapons, survivors. Flesh burns, blood flows, memory fades, and still they move forward because obedience demands it, because fear enforces it, because survival is nothing without the chain. And in the lingering smoke, amid the broken earth and the cries of the dying, the Penal Legion prepares for the next wave, the next inferno of fire and flesh, knowing that life continues only through compliance, and that death waits patiently for any lapse in obedience. The sky burns with a crimson light. The Penal Legion kneels on scorched earth, dust rising around them, collars humming faintly against throats. The commissars move among the men, eyes like blades, pistols ready, ensuring that even the faintest tremor of doubt or fear is punished. Obedience is no longer a suggestion, it is law, it is survival, it is the only thing that separates life from death. Here, in the crucible of the Emperor's wrath, the legionnaires face their ultimate trial. Weapons are laid before them, armor is inspected. The ritual of obedience is performed not as ceremony, but as necessity. Every pulse of the collar reinforces the hierarchy. Every glance from a commissar commands silence. Every breath is measured, every heartbeat accounted for. Punishments are swift, brutal, and absolute. A single hesitation, a misaligned stance, a flicker of fear in the eyes, and the collar delivers its merciless lesson. Pain courses through nerves, reminding the men that the Emperor tolerates no weakness, that survival is conditional, and that the Legion exists, not for personal glory, but as instruments of the Imperium's will. Rituals of sacrifice reinforce the ideological conditioning. The wounded are sometimes offered as examples, the disobedient executed publicly, their screams a stark warning. Blood stains the soil, and the living absorb the lesson. The Emperor's wrath is absolute, impartial, and unforgiving. Humanity is secondary, obedience is everything. Survival is obedience. Life is granted only through submission. The trials are relentless. Men are pushed beyond the boundaries of fatigue, beyond the limits of pain, beyond the capacity for fear. Collars pulse continuously, muscles are pushed to exhaustion, minds are tested with impossible choices. The purpose is not merely to punish, but to remold, to strip the self of all individuality, to forge loyalty through fear, through suffering, and through the certainty of death if the chain is broken. The psychological toll is profound. Memories of life before the Legion are stripped away. Identity becomes irrelevant. Emotions are dangerous. Compassion is weakness. Each man learns to trust only the chain of command, the collars, the commissars, and the doctrine that the Emperor's will is absolute. Every action, every thought, every breath is measured against this unforgiving standard. Yet paradoxically, this harsh conditioning creates a terrifying kind of unity. Men act in perfect unison, instincts sharpened to obedience, fear transformed into precision. They survive because the hierarchy ensures survival, not because of skill, not because of courage, but because fear is an instrument, wielded with surgical efficiency, to maintain the line. The sacrifices demanded are absolute. Comrades fall in trials, designed to test endurance and loyalty. Some collapse under pain, some under fear, some under exhaustion. Their deaths are reminders to the living that the Emperor tolerates nothing less than perfection in obedience. The Penal Legion learns that each life is expendable, and that survival is earned only through complete submission. As the day wears on, the men are hollowed further, bodies battered, minds sharpened by fear, spirits tempered by relentless ritual. The crucible of the Emperor's wrath is not an event, but a continuum, an endless cycle of testing, punishment and obedience, and yet the men endure. They rise because they must, march because they must, fight because they must. The hierarchy, the collars, the commissars, these are their lifelines, their chains, their purpose. By the end of the trial, the Penal Legion stands battered, scarred, obedient and hollow. Their individuality is nearly gone. Fear, pain, and conditioning have replaced thought, memory, and emotion. And in this moment, one truth becomes undeniable. To survive the Emperor's wrath is to surrender everything, to become nothing more than a tool, a weapon, a shadow of a man bound to the will of the Imperium. The sun beats down mercilessly, turning the earth to iron and ash. The Penal Legion stands in formation, collars humming faintly against their throats, muscles taut with exhaustion, eyes hollowed by months of relentless training and combat. The commissars move through the ranks, pistols in hand, scanning, judging, waiting for the slightest sign of weakness. Obedience is no longer a choice, it is survival, and survival demands perfection. The trials begin. Men are forced to carry massive loads across jagged terrain, to run through fields of fire, to wade into rivers of blood and mud. Every movement is observed, every hesitation punished. The collars enforce compliance, delivering bursts of excruciating pain to reinforce the necessity of obedience. Each step forward is a test of will, of endurance, of absolute submission. Some falter, muscles give out, lungs burn, minds scream for respite. The commissars do not hesitate, pistols bark, collars surge, and the lesson is immediate. Weakness is fatal, hesitation is unacceptable, and the Emperor's wrath spares none. The fallen are left to the elements. Their screams are warning to the living. Fear and pain merge into a singular force, shaping the survivors into instruments of the Imperium. Every man learns to act without thought, to obey without question, to endure without pause. The distinction between self and duty fades. Memory, emotion and individuality are stripped away, replaced by a precise, terrifying focus. Survival, through absolute obedience. The psychological toll is severe. Men struggle to recognize their own reflection in the mud-smeared armor. Faces of comrades haunt their thoughts, even as the collar suppresses sentiment. Dreams are dominated by fire, blood and orders. Fear becomes instinct. Obedience becomes muscle memory, and identity dissolves into rhythm, the rhythm of march, of attack, of survival. Yet the trials continue. Combat exercises simulate impossible scenarios, ambushes, traps, overwhelming enemy forces. Legionnaires are tested under smoke, fire and deafening noise. One misstep, one pause to think, one glance at the fallen, and the collar delivers pain, the commissar delivers judgment, and the lesson is reinforced. Only those who obey fully, instinctively, without hesitation, survive to continue. In this crucible, courage and fear are inseparable. Men act heroically not because they choose to, but because hesitation equals death. Splintered hands fire lasguns, chain swords cleave with mechanical precision, bodies move in perfect unison. Obedience has become instinct, fear has become fuel, and survival is a matter of conditioning, rather than choice. By the end of the trials, the men are broken and reforged. Every body bears scars, every mind carries the weight of countless lessons in pain, endurance and submission. They have been stripped of hesitation, of doubt, of hesitation, of emotion. In their place remains a single terrifying certainty: obedience is life, disobedience is death, and survival belongs only to those who surrender fully to the chain of command. The Penal Legion stands transformed, shadows of men now, instruments of war, living only to obey, to endure and to strike with precision under orders. They are hollow, yet efficient, terrifying, yet controlled, human, yet unrecognizable. And the Emperor's wrath lingers, a constant presence, a reminder that trials never truly end, that perfection is demanded at every step, and that survival is measured not by valor, but by absolute obedience, endurance, and unflinching submission. Night falls over the training grounds, but the shadows are alive with fear and anticipation. The Penal Legion stands in formation, bodies battered, faces hollowed, minds sharpened by endless trial.
Collars hum faintly, a constant reminder that the Emperor's will is absolute, and that every thought, every hesitation, every spark of resistance will be punished without mercy. The men have learned the ultimate lesson: survival is obedience, and obedience is life. The final trial begins. It is not merely a test of strength or endurance, but of spirit, of will, of absolute loyalty. Comrades are sacrificed to reinforce the lesson. One wrong move, one flicker of doubt, one whisper of hesitation, and the consequences are immediate, brutal, and unforgettable. Pain pulses through the collars, screams echo in the night, and the living witness the price of imperfection. In these moments, fear transforms into mastery. The men no longer think, they act. Reflex and obedience fuse. Muscles respond before thought. Decisions are made by instinct, honed through months of conditioning, and every movement is precise, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. The Penal Legion has become a machine of war, guided by fear, reinforced by suffering, and perfected by the crucible of the Emperor's wrath. Sacrifice is constant. Bodies fall, blood stains the ground, and the remaining men absorb the lesson with every heartbeat. Compassion is erased. Emotion is dangerous. Memory is a liability. The line between self and duty disappears, leaving only the rhythm of obedience, the pulse of the collar, and the absolute certainty that survival requires surrender. Yet, within the horror, small sparks of resilience endure. A glance shared with a comrade, a silent nod before advancing, a fleeting instinct to protect another. These moments are fleeting, yet they remind the men that they are not yet entirely machine. But the commissars enforce suppression, and the collars remind them that hesitation will be met with pain. Even resilience is measured against the standard of obedience. By dawn, the trial concludes. The men are hollow, yet unbroken. Bodies are scarred, spirits tempered, and minds conditioned to perfection. They have learned the ultimate lesson: obedience is absolute, fear is an ally, and life is granted only to those who surrender entirely to the Imperium's will. The Penal Legion emerges from the night transformed. Shadows of men now, perfected instruments of war, obedient beyond question, efficient beyond imagination. They have survived the Emperor's wrath, not through courage or cunning, but through submission, endurance, and relentless obedience. Humanity has been eroded, replaced by a terrifying focus on duty, survival, and execution of orders. Even as the sun rises, casting light over the scarred training grounds, the lesson remains. Life is fragile, pain is constant, obedience is everything. The Emperor's wrath is eternal, and those who endure it carry the weight of absolute loyalty, the scars of sacrifice, and the mastery of fear honed into precision. In this crucible, the Penal Legion has been forged into its final form, unflinching, disciplined, hollowed, and terrifyingly efficient. They are no longer men in the fullest sense. They are instruments of the Imperium's will, shadows moving through fire and blood, shaped by suffering, perfected by fear, and sustained by obedience. And as they march forward, collars humming, commissars watching, and the memory of sacrifice etched into their minds, one truth remains undeniable: the Emperor's wrath does not merely punish, it transforms. It creates warriors who obey without question, who endure without pause, and who survive only by surrendering everything to the relentless will of the Imperium. The Penal Legion marches into ships that creak under their weight, engines vibrating with the promise of war, collars hum faintly against throats, a constant reminder that survival demands obedience. Commissars patrol the hold, pistols in hand, eyes like knives, scanning for hesitation. Every soldier knows the galaxy shows no mercy, and the Emperor tolerates none. Deployment is swift, precise, and terrifying. Drop pods hurl the men into worlds scarred by fire and plague, where the air itself seems alive with decay and malice. The ground quakes under alien artillery, the sky streaks with fire, and the cries of the dying are as natural as the wind. The Penal Legion has no choice but to advance, to obey, to survive. Hesitation means death, and death is ever present. The soldiers step onto the battlefield like shadows, their eyes hollowed by previous campaigns, their bodies scarred, their minds conditioned to obey. Fear is a constant companion. yet it drives precision. Every order, every pulse of the collar, every glare from a commissar is absorbed, transformed into action. They move as one, a single machine of flesh and fear, molded by months of trials and suffering. Horrors await at every turn. Entire landscapes are twisted by war. Alien horrors crawl from the soil, and Xenos ambushes erupt without warning. Men are torn apart, limbs shredded, screams swallowed by the chaos of fire and destruction. Some fall immediately, others stagger forward, driven by the chain of command and the unyielding rhythm of obedience. Survival is not about skill, it is about compliance, endurance, and the ability to act without hesitation, under conditions no human mind was meant to endure. The psychological toll is immediate and unrelenting. Some soldiers freeze for an instant, only to be jolted forward by a pulse of the collar. Others falter under the weight of horror, yet the commissars are ever present, delivering judgment swiftly and decisively. The battlefield does not forgive, and neither do the instruments of command. Amid the chaos, glimmers of humanity flicker and vanish. A soldier catches the fleeting glance of a comrade's fear, a whisper of concern, a small instinct to shield another. Yet the collars hum, pain surges, and instinct is replaced by obedience. The galaxy's horrors are vast, unyielding, and indifferent, and the Penal Legion learns quickly. Emotion is a liability, survival is obedience, and the only certainty is suffering. The men fight not for glory, not for honor, not for victory. They fight because to stop is to die, because to hesitate is to die, because to defy is to die. The campaigns into the maw of war strip them of identity, memory, and hope, leaving only the hollow, efficient precision of obedience. They become shadows, instruments of the Imperium, walking through landscapes of fire, blood, and alien terror. Even death becomes routine. Limbs are lost, comrades vanish, explosions ripple across the battlefield, and the men continue. Each pulse of the collar reinforces the lesson. Survival is earned through compliance. Pain is endured because obedience demands it. Fear is harnessed because it is necessary. Humanity is abandoned because it is a risk. By the end of the first engagement, the Penal Legion stands battered, hollowed, and obedient. The terrain is scarred, the enemy broken, yet the soldiers are no longer fully human. They are instruments, perfect machines of survival, obedience, and lethal efficiency. And the galaxy waits for them, infinite in horror, endless in its capacity to test their endurance, fear, and obedience. The Penal Legion lands amid chaos, the ground quaking under alien artillery, skies streaked with fire, and the cries of the dying filling the air. Collars hum faintly, reminding each man that hesitation is death, and death is omnipresent. Commissars patrol every line, eyes sharp, pistols ready, enforcing absolute obedience. Every movement, every breath, every instinct is measured against the unforgiving rhythm of command. The first volleys tear through the valley. Men scream, bullets tear flesh, and explosions throw earth and bodies into the air. Yet the legionnaires move forward, mechanical, relentless. Pain is constant, fear omnipresent, but the chain of command dictates every step. They march, they fire, they strike, not because of courage, but because survival demands obedience. Close combat is a nightmare of fire and flesh. Chain swords bite into alien limbs, Luskans flare, and the smell of blood and burning flesh hangs heavy in the air. Comrades fall beside one another, torn apart in seconds, and still the men move, driven by the collars, driven by fear, driven by the unyielding presence of the commissars. Hesitation is impossible. Pause is fatal. The battlefield does not forgive, and neither does the chain of command. Amid the chaos, individual horrors unfold. A soldier's arm is shredded by a Xenos blade. He screams, but a pulse from the collar drives him forward. Another sees a friend's head torn apart. Grief flares, but it is extinguished instantly by instinct and fear. Memories of home, thoughts of life before the Legion, flicker briefly and die. Humanity is stripped away in the maw of battle, leaving only obedience, only survival, only movement forward. The enemy is relentless. Alien forces swarm, strike from unexpected directions, and fight with brutal cunning, yet the Penal Legion responds with precision honed through months of training and trials. Fear sharpens reflexes, pain hardens resolve, and obedience transforms men into terrifying instruments of war. No hesitation, no emotion, no thought beyond the immediate rhythm of orders. Death becomes routine. Limbs, faces, bodies, screams, all merge into a relentless symphony of carnage, yet the men persist. The commissars patrol, collars hum, and survival is earned one obedient action at a time. Even as comrades are consumed by the alien onslaught, the Legion marches forward, step by step, breath by breath, a living testament to endurance, shaped by fear and command. The psychological toll is immense. Minds fracture under the constant barrage of death and terror. Sleep offers no respite. Dreams are filled with fire, blood, and the unceasing rhythm of orders. Pain becomes a companion, fear a guide, and identity fades into the hollow efficiency demanded by the Imperium. Obedience is life. Hesitation is death. Humanity is expendable. By the end of the engagement, the valley is littered with the dead and dying. The enemy is broken, yet the Penal Legion stands battered, scarred and hollowed. Every step forward, every action taken has been enforced by fear, pain, and relentless discipline. The survivors are no longer fully human. They are shadows, weapons, instruments of obedience forged in fire and flesh. And yet, even in the aftermath, the galaxy waits. More battles, more horrors, more fields of fire and blood lie ahead. The Penal Legion marches on, driven by the collars, the commissars, and the unyielding chain of command. Survival is not guaranteed, but obedience ensures motion, endurance, and the continuation of the Legion's grim purpose. Silence falls like a shroud over the battlefield, but it is a silence heavy with smoke, blood, and the echoes of death. The Penal Legion moves through the wreckage, collars humming faintly against throats, eyes hollow, bodies battered, limbs are torn, armor scorched, faces streaked with mud and blood. The air is thick with ash and the iron scent of the fallen. Every step is heavy, every breath measured, yet the chain of command compels them forward. Rest is temporary, survival conditional, obedience absolute. The wounded crawl, moaning softly, blood mixing with mud. Comrades help them not out of empathy, but to maintain the formation, to keep the line moving, to ensure that the rhythm of obedience continues. The commissars patrol relentlessly, pistols raised, eyes sharp. One falter, one pause to grieve, one whisper of doubt, and the collar punishes without hesitation. Discipline is enforced through pain, fear, and absolute authority. Men glance at the fallen, faces familiar or nameless, and a flicker of memory rises. A mother's face, a childhood memory, a life stolen. But the collar hums, the commissar commands, and the thought is extinguished. Obedience reclaims the mind, erasing doubt, erasing grief, erasing humanity. Survival is earned only through complete compliance. Rations are consumed quickly, water rationed, wounds tended as efficiently as possible. Sleep comes in fragments, brief and shallow. Even these moments are monitored, measured, controlled. The hierarchy dictates every movement, every action, every breath. There is no pause, no reflection, no solace. The battle may be over, but the war never ends. The psychological toll is relentless. The men are haunted by screams, visions of alien terror, and the stark reality of their own survival. Memory fractures, emotions dull, and humanity erodes. They march on instinct, act on conditioning, obey without question. Fear is a constant companion, but it is harnessed, molded, and converted into efficiency. Obedience has become instinct. Survival is inseparable from compliance. Comrades whisper in fleeting moments, sharing brief glances of understanding or solidarity. But even this is dangerous. A murmur, a gesture, a flicker of empathy. All are watched. Collars pulse, pain surges, and instinct is replaced by absolute obedience. Survival depends not on strength or courage, but on the ability to suppress all human instinct, all hesitation, all thought beyond the chain of command. By nightfall, The Penal Legion gathers for the next orders. Weapons are checked, wounds inspected, lines reorganized. The terrain is scarred. Bodies lie in grotesque patterns. Yet the survivors are ready to march again. Their minds are hollowed, bodies battered, yet the rhythm of obedience sustains them. They endure, not because of courage or skill, but because the chain of command dictates motion, and the collars enforce compliance. The galaxy waits, with unending horrors, more alien worlds, more unrelenting enemies, more fields of fire and blood. The Penal Legion marches forward, shadows of men transformed into instruments of war, surviving because they obey, enduring because they are conditioned to endure, hollowed because they are forced to survive. Even amid horror and exhaustion, one truth is undeniable. In the Maw, survival is not about valor or skill, it is about obedience. Pain is endured, fear is harnessed, humanity is sacrificed, and life persists only through unflinching submission to the chain of command. The battle is over, but the war, and the march into terror, continues without pause. The world they step onto is death incarnate. Rubble stretches as far as the eye can see, blackened and twisted by countless battles. The air is thick with smoke, ash and the tang of blood. The sky itself seems to mourn, clouds swirling like dark omens over the landscape of ruin. The Penal Legion moves forward, collars humming against their throats, muscles taut, faces hollowed. Every step is dictated by fear, by training, by the unyielding chain of command. The commissars patrol among them, pistols drawn, eyes scanning. One tremor of hesitation, one backward glance, one faltering thought, and the collar punishes instantly. Survival is measured not by courage, not by skill, but by obedience, and the Emperor tolerates no weakness. Every man knows this. Every man feels it. Deep in the marrow of his bones, the first wave of the enemy strikes. Alien claws tear through armor. Luskan fire cuts through flesh, and the earth itself seems to rise against them. Screams mix with the roar of weapons, the crackle of explosions and the humming of collars. The Penal Legion responds not with valor, but with conditioned precision. Every movement is instinctive, every action dictated by the training, fear and rituals they have endured. Pain is constant. Limbs are burned, torn, crushed, collars pulse. With every misstep, a reminder that hesitation is fatal. The commissars enforce obedience with unflinching severity, ensuring that fear transforms into action, despair into motion. The men of the Penal Legion become shadows, instruments of the Imperium, moving through fire, blood and ash, with terrifying efficiency. Amid the carnage, fleeting sparks of human instinct arise. A soldier shields a comrade from a blast. Another pushes forward despite shattered limbs, but these moments are brief, extinguished by collars and commissars, replaced by the singular rhythm of obedience. Humanity is a luxury the galaxy cannot afford, and the Penal Legion learns that survival demands total submission. The battlefield tests mind and body to their limit. The enemy is relentless, unyielding and cruel. Some men fall instantly, others stagger forward, driven solely by the pulse of the collar and the unrelenting presence of command. Every step is a negotiation between instinct and obedience, between life and death, and between what remains of their humanity and the machine they are becoming. By nightfall, the first stage of the campaign ends. The survivors stand amidst ruin, bodies battered, minds hollowed, souls frayed. The landscape bears witness to horror, unimaginable, yet the chain of command ensures they will rise again, that the collars will hum, that the march will continue. Pain has taught obedience, fear has sharpened instinct, and suffering has erased hesitation. The Penal Legion has taken the first step into final transformation. They are no longer men in the fullest sense. They are shadows, instruments of war, conditioned to obey, trained to endure, and hollowed by the unrelenting demands of the Imperium. And as they march forward, the galaxy waits. More horrors, more blood, more fire, testing every ounce of obedience, every spark of endurance, every remnant of humanity. The battlefield is a crucible of fire and shadow. Explosions rip the earth apart, alien shrieks tear the air, and blood flows in rivers across shattered ground. The Penal Legion moves through it with hollow precision, collars humming, eyes vacant yet sharp, bodies driven by the rhythm of obedience. Each man is a conduit of command, every motion dictated by the hierarchy, every action enforced by fear and pain. The enemy strikes with unrelenting ferocity, Xenos claw, bite and tear. But the Legion does not falter. Reflex and training override thought. Pain is endured, blood ignored, and fear harnessed. Each swing of a chainsword, each pull of a trigger, is exact, precise, and devoid of hesitation. The men have become instruments of war, shadows walking through carnage, molded by suffering and perfected by obedience.
Sacrifice is immediate and absolute. Comrades fall beside one another, screams swallowed by the chaos, yet the survivors move forward. Every death reinforces the lesson. Hesitation is fatal, disobedience is death. Survival belongs only to those who surrender fully. The commissars enforce this law without mercy, their pistols ready, their eyes unblinking, collars surge, punishing doubt, ensuring motion, forging obedience through pain. Amid the slaughter, the mind bends. Humanity erodes with every scream, every loss, every pulse of the collar. Memories of home, of life before the Legion, flicker briefly and vanish. Compassion is dangerous, hesitation lethal. The men become shadows, hollowed yet efficient, terrifying in their precision and unyielding in their obedience. Fear, pain, and suffering are no longer burdens but tools, honed to enforce survival. The pinnacle of battle is reached as the enemy mass swells, overwhelming in number and savagery. Yet the Penal Legion holds. Movements are synchronized, every soldier reacting with instinct trained through months of trials. Fear sharpens reflexes, pain steels resolve, and the unyielding chain of command ensures that even the exhausted, wounded, and hollowed can continue to fight. Survival is obedience. Obedience is life. By the end of the engagement, the battlefield is a graveyard of fire and ruin. The Penal Legion stands battered, scarred, hollowed yet unbroken. Bodies are broken, minds conditioned, and spirits tempered by relentless suffering. Every man is an instrument, every movement a calculated act of obedience, every breath a testament to endurance under the Emperor's unyielding will. Even in victory, there is no triumph, there is only survival, earned through pain, fear, and total submission. Humanity has been eroded, replaced by an efficient, obedient precision that terrifies both allies and enemies. The Penal Legion has crossed the threshold into something beyond men, something shaped entirely by the crucible of war, suffering, and command. And as the survivors pause, catching ragged breaths, they know that the final step awaits. The galaxy remains infinite in horror, the enemy unyielding, and the next campaign inevitable. Their transformation is nearly complete. The shadows of men have become perfect instruments, bound to obey, endure, and strike without hesitation, prepared for the ultimate test that will define them or erase them entirely. The battlefield is littered with bodies, ash, and ruin. Smoke hangs in the air, carrying the scent of blood, fire, and alien decay. The Penal Legion moves through it, collars pulsing faintly, faces hollowed, bodies battered, and minds conditioned to perfection. They have endured the impossible, survived the unthinkable, and emerged as instruments of the Imperium's will. The final tests await. Each step forward is a negotiation between instinct and obedience. Comrades fall, casualties mount, yet the survivors advance without hesitation. Collars hum, commissars enforce, and fear drives action. Pain is endured, exhaustion ignored, and humanity is sacrificed. Survival demands total submission, and the men obey without question. In the climactic engagement, the Penal Legion faces the most horrifying foes yet. Xenos masses swarm, the sky is alight with fire, and the ground quakes beneath artillery. Men fall, screams pierce the air, and chaos reigns supreme. Yet the Legion moves as one, hollow, precise, unflinching. Every motion is dictated by training, every reaction instantaneous, every breath a testament to obedience. Sacrifice is absolute. The wounded are left only if they threaten the line. The dying serve as grim reminders of the cost of hesitation. Each loss reinforces the lesson. Obedience is survival, hesitation is death, and life is granted only through unyielding compliance. The men act not out of courage, not out of thought, but because obedience drives them, because fear shapes them, because the chain of command ensures motion. The psychological toll is total. Memories of home, of life before the Legion, flicker and die. Compassion, hesitation, doubt, all are extinguished. In their place is a terrifying clarity. Every step, every breath, every action serves the Imperium. Humanity is no longer a priority. Obedience is the essence of existence. Pain becomes a guide, fear a tool, suffering a teacher. By the end of the campaign, the Penal Legion is perfected. Men are hollowed, bodies scarred, minds sharpened into instruments of war. They move through devastation with mechanical precision, efficient, unflinching, terrifying in their obedience. The collars have ensured their loyalty, the commissars have enforced their submission, and the crucible of war has erased all hesitation. They are no longer men in the fullest sense. They are shadows, instruments, weapons shaped by pain and fear, and yet in this hollow perfection, there is terrifying mastery. The Penal Legion fights not for glory, not for honor, not for life, but as an extension of the Imperium's will. Action, every strike, every motion is precise, efficient and unwavering. They endure without pause, obey without question, and strike without hesitation. Fear, suffering and obedience have fused into a singular, relentless force. As they march forward from the smoldering battlefield, the galaxy watches in silence. Shadows move through ash and ruin, instruments perfected by pain, endurance and absolute obedience. The Penal Legion has completed its transformation. Humanity has been stripped away, leaving only the terrifying efficiency of total compliance. They are the Emperor's instruments, unflinching, hollowed and eternal in their obedience. The final truth is undeniable. In the Penal Legion, survival is obedience, and obedience is absolute. Life persists only through submission. Pain is endured without question. Fear is mastered. Humanity is sacrificed. And in the endless, merciless expanse of the galaxy, these shadows of men continue their march, unbroken, precise, and terrifyingly obedient, the ultimate instruments of the Imperium's wrath. The Penal Legion marches across worlds scarred by war, void between stars heavy with silence, and skies streaked with fire and ash. Collars hum, faintly reminding each soldier that obedience is life, and hesitation is death. Commissars patrol the lines, pistols ever ready, ensuring that even the slightest tremor of doubt or hesitation is met with immediate punishment. The Legion moves as one, a shadow of men, perfected through suffering, fear and unyielding discipline. Centuries of campaigns have eroded their humanity, leaving only precision, obedience, and the terrifying efficiency of instruments forged by the Imperium. Faces are hollowed, bodies scarred and minds conditioned to survive and execute orders without question. They have seen worlds consumed by fire, alien horrors beyond comprehension, and the relentless toll of combat, yet they endure. Fear has become instinct, pain has become routine, and suffering has become purpose. The legacy of the Penal Legion is written in ash and blood. Entire worlds bear the marks of their campaigns, cities shattered, alien hordes annihilated, and survivors left to whisper the names of those who endured the Emperor's wrath. The men themselves have become legends of horror, instruments of obedience, whose very presence inspires dread in friend and foe alike. Humanity has been sacrificed, yet in that hollowing, a terrifying perfection has been forged. Obedience is eternal. Each man moves in rhythm with his comrades, reacting without thought, acting without hesitation. Collars enforce compliance, commissars enforce discipline, and the galaxy watches silently as shadows of men traverse battlefields with unerring precision. They endure without pause, strike without question, and obey without hesitation. Survival depends not on skill, courage or loyalty, only on total submission. The psychological toll of endless campaigns is etched into their very being. Memories of home, of life before the Legion, are fragments that flare and die. Compassion is suppressed, doubt eradicated, hesitation punished. What remains is obedience refined into art, fear mastered into a tool, and suffering transformed into power. They are no longer men. They are the Imperium's will made flesh, moving across the galaxy as hollowed, efficient instruments of war. Every engagement reinforces their legacy. Entire worlds fall under their march. Alien creatures shattered by chainswords, lasguns and unflinching resolve. Yet the Penal Legion is not celebrated, not honored, not remembered with pride. They are feared. Allies whisper in awe, enemies tremble in horror. To witness their march is to see the culmination of obedience, suffering and fear, a shadow of eternity that will not falter. Even in the quiet moments between campaigns, the rhythm of obedience persists. Rations are distributed, weapons inspected, wounds tended, all under the ever-present eyes of commissars and the humming collars that remind each soldier of the cost of hesitation. Sleep comes in fragments, memories linger briefly, only to be extinguished by the certainty of command. Life is measured in obedience, pain, and the endless march across the galaxy. By the end of the first leg of their eternal journey, the Penal Legion stands as a testament to the Emperor's will. They have surrendered all individuality, all emotion, all hesitation. What remains is precision, fear-honed efficiency, and unflinching obedience. They are instruments, shadows of men, terrifying in their perfection, eternal in their march, unyielding in their purpose. The universe is infinite, its horrors unending, yet the Penal Legion endures. They walk through fire, ash and blood, the ghosts of countless campaigns shaping every motion. Humanity may be gone, but in its place exists a terrifying mastery, obedience perfected, fear harnessed, suffering transmuted into instrumentality. They are the Emperor's shadows, moving endlessly across eternity. The Penal Legion moves through worlds ravaged by war, landscapes scarred beyond recognition, skies choked with smoke and fire. Collars hum against throats, commissars patrol with unblinking eyes, and every step is dictated by obedience. The men are shadows, instruments of the Imperium's will, carrying the weight of centuries of suffering, conditioning and unflinching duty. Every campaign tests them further. Alien hordes, unthinkable horrors and incomprehensible environs assault them endlessly. Limbs are torn, minds fray, and bodies collapse. Yet the Legion endures. Survival is dictated not by skill, not by courage, but by absolute compliance. Pain is endured, fear is harnessed, and humanity is sacrificed in every engagement. The soldiers themselves are hollowed, faces etched with exhaustion, eyes vacant yet sharp, bodies scarred and minds stripped of hesitation. The rhythm of obedience dominates all. Every movement is precise, every reaction instantaneous, every strike calculated by instinct trained through years of relentless suffering. They are instruments of war, perfected by cruelty, fear and discipline. Sacrifice is constant. Men fall in waves, torn apart by enemy fire or succumb to the endless strain. Yet the survivors advance. The collars hum, the commissars enforce, and obedience ensures motion. Even grief, even fear, even memory is transformed into fuel for survival. Humanity becomes a distant memory. Efficiency, fear-honed precision, and submission become reality. The psychological erosion continues with every campaign. Thoughts of home, of life before the Legion, flare briefly then vanish. Compassion is dangerous, hesitation lethal. Identity dissolves, leaving only the terrifying clarity of obedience. Pain is endured without question. Fear is mastered and converted into purpose. The Penal Legion marches onward, unbroken yet hollowed, a shadow of men shaped entirely by suffering and command. Allies whisper at their passage, awed and fearful. Enemies cower or flee, recognizing that these are no longer men, but shadows of perfection, instruments designed to obey, to endure and to annihilate without hesitation. Their reputation spreads across worlds, not as heroes but as terrors, embodiments of the Emperor's wrath in flesh and bone. Even in moments of relative calm, the discipline is absolute. Rations are consumed methodically, wounds are tended under strict supervision, and sleep is brief and fragmented. Collars pulse faintly, ensuring obedience, reinforcing the rhythm of motion and submission. The Penal Legion is a living testament to the cost of survival and the perfection of obedience. By the end of another campaign, the Legion emerges scarred yet efficient, hollowed yet precise, terrifying yet necessary. Humanity has been sacrificed,
replaced by unflinching obedience, fear-honed instincts, and mechanical precision. They are shadows walking across eternity, instruments of the Imperium, eternal in their purpose, relentless in their execution. The galaxy watches silently. Worlds burn, aliens fall, and the Penal Legion marches onward. Eternal shadows, perfected instruments of war. They endure because they must, obey because they cannot do otherwise, and strike because survival demands it. Pain, fear, and suffering are constant companions, but they are mastered, harnessed, transformed into power and obedience, and as they move across the endless void, one truth remains immutable: the Penal Legion is eternal. Humanity is gone, individuality erased, and hesitation annihilated. What remains is obedience perfected, fear mastered, suffering transmuted into unyielding purpose, and an eternal march that will continue across the galaxy, leaving terror and obedience in its wake. Across countless worlds, through fire, ash, and ruin, the Penal Legion marches on. Collars hum faintly, commissars patrol with unwavering eyes, and the rhythm of obedience drives every motion. The soldiers are hollowed, scarred, conditioned to perfection, instruments of the Emperor's will, forged in the crucible of endless war. Humanity is gone, replaced by efficiency, precision, and unflinching obedience. The legacy of the Legion is written in blood and fire. Cities reduced to rubble, alien hordes annihilated, and survivors haunted by shadows that move without hesitation. The Penal Legion leaves behind not hope, not pride, not honor, only terror. The galaxy whispers their name as a warning: obedience perfected, fear mastered, suffering transmuted into an unyielding force. Each campaign reinforces their perfection. They endure the unimaginable, survive the impossible, and strike without pause. Limbs are lost, comrades fall, yet the chain of command ensures motion. The collars enforce obedience, and fear becomes instinct. The Penal Legion fights not for glory, not for recognition, but because the rhythm of obedience is survival, and survival demands perfection. The psychological toll is complete. Memories of life before the Legion flare and vanish. Compassion is extinguished, hesitation punished. The men have been hollowed into terrifying precision, unflinching discipline, and unwavering execution. They are instruments of war, shadows walking across the galaxy, unbroken, efficient, and perfected. Pain, fear, and suffering have been mastered, transmuted into obedience and lethal efficiency. Allies and enemies alike witness their passage with awe and dread. The Penal Legion is not human. It is a force, a shadow, a living weapon of the Imperium. Their march is eternal, their obedience absolute, and their presence a reminder that survival is never guaranteed, and life is granted only to those who surrender entirely to the chain of command. Even in moments between battles, the discipline persists. Weapons are checked, wounds tended, formations maintained, sleep fragmented, and the hum of the collars never ceases. Every man, every step, every action is a testament to endurance, obedience, and the terrifying perfection forged through centuries of war. Humanity is a memory, obedience is reality, survival is total submission. By the end of the final leg of their eternal journey, the Penal Legion stands perfected, hollowed, scarred, disciplined. They are shadows of men transformed into instruments of the Imperium. The galaxy has been scarred by their march, yet they endure. Pain, fear, and suffering have shaped them, conditioned them, perfected them. They are the Emperor's will made flesh, eternal, unflinching, and terrifyingly obedient. And as they move across worlds consumed by fire, across battlefields soaked in blood, through void and ash, one truth becomes undeniable: the Penal Legion will never falter, never hesitate, and never cease its march. Humanity may be gone, individuality erased, and emotion extinguished, but what remains is eternal obedience, perfected precision, and the unyielding terror of a force forged in pain, fear, and absolute submission. The Penal Legion is eternal. They are the shadows of men, the instruments of the Imperium, the embodiment of fear, obedience, and suffering. They march through eternity, leaving ruin and discipline in their wake. And in every whispered name, every tremor of dread, every field of fire and blood, the galaxy remembers: obedience is life, hesitation is death, And the Penal Legion is the final testament to the Emperor's wrath and the perfection of war.